All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Santa Rosa County Board of County Commissioners meeting for Monday, September 24th. It is 9 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll start this morning off with ask everybody if they will please put their communication device on a silent mode. When you come up, you will need to fill out a speaker's form and give us your name and address if you speak today. I'm going to ask this morning that Commissioner Parker lead us in prayer, Commissioner Lynchard lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all please rise.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Some information items for this morning we'll start out with is on Thursday, September 27th, we'll have a proclamation for Pink Day, also a proclamation for Jump Day. So we'll take care of those two. Also an information item, Thursday, September 27th at 9:30 a.m. will be a public hearing to amend the Santa Rosa County Comp Plan CIP Ordinance. So those are items that we will take up at this time on Thursday morning. Another item just for information, that if you've missed it this past weekend on Saturday, how many of y'all know that we have our own model air park in Santa Rosa County? All right, well, we got one person, Randy knows it. We do, and they had a great event day Saturday. Was one of their, I think, their grand opening for it. And went real well. They had even had a candy drop from a model RC plane for the children up there. So I feel like that's something that'll turn into a great event in our county. I know Commissioner Parker and his children were there, and I took a whole herd of my grandchildren up there. So it was a great day. Everybody had a lot of fun. All right, this morning presentations, Lifeguard update. You folks have the floor. Oh, got back. The agenda. All right.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, staff, and attendees here in Santa Rosa County. My name is Loreli Anzaldua. I have been serving as the EMS Chief for Lifeguard Ambulance Service for about the last 2.5 years. In May of 2008, I was afforded the opportunity to become a part of the Lifeguard family as a brand new EMT fresh out of school. They continue to help me grow in sending me to paramedic school and giving me other opportunities to serve in a variety of leadership roles, including the chief's position that I'm currently seated in. Unfortunately, my time with Lifeguard has come to an end, and I've decided to take a chance to move back to be with my husband, who was winged here as a naval aviator at NAS Whiting Field, and move over to Jacksonville. So with that, we've gone through a selection process and found a new chief, and that is Chuck Cooper, who's going to be stepping into my role and taking over as the EMS Chief for Lifeguard Ambulance Service. I personally would like to thank you all for y'all's support, and to the citizens of Santa Rosa County who have supported Lifeguard, not only as an organization and an entity, but each of us individually in a lot of ways. So thank you to you personally from me. It means a lot. And this is Chuck Cooper.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff, it's a privilege for me to be selected and to come to Santa Rosa County. I've spent the last week and a half driving through the county and learning the county, and good God, this is a big county. It's just, I want to build upon what the chief and staff have done at Lifeguard, the relationship they have with your county, your citizens, your constituents, and the guests that come here is astounding. The professionalism, the teamwork. Your staff at the EOC, soon to be Public Safety, are just phenomenal people. I'm happy to be here. I'm available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you need me, call me. Good, bad, or indifferent. I look forward to working with you and making great things happen. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, and we'll certainly miss you. I'm sure you'll be happy to be back with your husband, though. And, the ambulance service here in Santa Rosa County has been something that's been phenomenal for our citizens, and response times and all the different things we've developed over the years, the rapid response vehicles, and having one of the few helicopters for life safety here in the county. I've seen it continue to grow over the years. It's been one of the best decisions as a board we've been able to make in the past years. So, any other commissioners have any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Chuck, you have very big shoes to fill because, Loreli, you've been amazing, and you've been a great partner to the county and do so many things outside of just the general scope of your duties with Lifeguard. And you've made such an impact, such a positive impact throughout the county. And the time you take outside of your work responsibilities to donate your time and the passion and service and leadership that you provided to Santa Rosa County, very grateful for all that you have done. And I'm happy for you from a family perspective, but I'm sad that you won't be with us here anymore, but you're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Commissioner Williamson.
Well, again, thank you for coming today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Good luck in your future endeavors, and welcome to Santa Rosa County. All right. At this time, I'll ask if there's any changes to today's agenda before we proceed. I'll start to my right with Commissioner Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just a request. There's one item on the Public Works Committee relates to the NYSA Fieldhouse Edition, and Darren and his wife are here this morning. If at all possible, could we move that item up to wherever the chairman would prefer?
We'll go ahead and do that at the beginning of the admin committee, since that's the only item Commissioner Salter has. We'll go ahead and take that then.
Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Chair.
All right, Commissioner Parker.
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Salter, other than the change we just did to your committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No changes, just talking about the airport. I want to let everybody know that we now have a caution light in downtown Schmuckla.
Commissioner Lynchard.
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anything from staff?
Sir, no change to the agenda. I just wanted to provide an update that we do have the mandatory pre-bid meeting on Friday morning here in this boardroom for the courthouse design build RFQ. So just wanted to let you all know that's coming up, and we'll be completing that this week.
All right, good work, Dan.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
just a question. Will that be a live stream like the current meeting or no?
No.
Okay.
All right.
No changes.
Roy? Mark, anything down that way? Nothing? Donnie, anything from down your end? No changes?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, then we'll proceed with the agenda as noted. Prior to the Administrative Committee, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Salter for Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One item, discussion of award of the quote from JMJ General Contractors Incorporated for the construction of NYSA Fieldhouse Addition at a cost of $59,975, with funding coming from District 4 Recreation Funds. Commissioner Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Darren and Patty are here this morning. Darren is the president of the NYSA board and has been a long time volunteer there. The day after, this project has been going on. We've known about it for about 4 years. It was actually on the list of projects and improvements that was submitted by NYSA. Shortly after I took office, I asked them to prioritize what they would need in the way of improvements, and this was one of the projects or one of the additions they wanted to add out there at the park. I think an RFP went out maybe a year ago or a little bit more than a year ago, and all parties involved thought the price maybe was a little bit too high, so we tried to go back and look for ways to use another provider possibly to get the costs down, but still deliver this asset. So that's where we find ourselves today, and if you have any questions for Darren, he's here to answer those.
Darren, good morning. You have the podium.
Just hit the button. There you go. It's on now.
Gotcha. All right. So I don't need to keep it held down? My name's Darren Thomas. I'm the president of the Navarre Youth Sports Association. Been involved out there in the park for the last 12 years. Been president for the last 3. Coach youth football, youth baseball. As many of y'all know, NYSA has got over 3,000 member families, kids out there playing. We've had a lot of it. Good things happening. And just, the importance of youth sports in our community. I mean, you can't understate how important that is to have kids involved in something constructive and organized and positive as our youth sports. And it's just really, in my opinion, the fabric of our community, bringing everybody together. This particular project, the expansion of our football press box, is so we can actually store our football equipment and everything that's there on site. Currently, it is a Herculean task to take over 300 sets of gear and off, this is all volunteers, mind you, nobody's paid. Get everybody together, parents, coaches, everybody, move it off site, store it in a climate control facility, because if you don't, it mildews, it goes bad and you have to replace it. And then bringing all that back and forth. And we've been doing that for a number of years now. And this is something we have prioritized with Commissioner Williamson over 4 years ago on our project plan. We finally are getting to it. We're very excited about it. The parents, the kids, the football program is very excited about it. And we are glad to finally be at this stage where, we can hopefully move this forward and get it done to really help our families. So we appreciate your consideration. Remember out there walking the park with Mr. Furman, we were looking at, were there other ways we could store the equipment? And he and I came up with the consensus that, hey, expanding what was already existing, was really the best way to do it. And so it's been an ongoing thing. We're just hopefully we can get this over the final step here and get it constructed for us.
Mr. Snow?
I want to personally thank you and all the volunteers, because youth sports is one of the major fibers of the quality of life of Santa Rosa County. We couldn't do it without volunteers. Saturday morning at 10:30, I was up at the Schmuckle Soccer Park watching my 6-year-old grandson play soccer in the wonderful heat. And it's just amazing how all the volunteers make it happen. So I want to personally thank you for everything you and all the volunteers do. And Mr. Chairman, I would recommend moving this to Thursday's agenda without objection. Thank you.
Hearing none, it passes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you.
And Commissioner
Concludes
Sullivan,
my report.
I don't think any of us could have put it any better. As a board, I feel like putting dollars into our children and these folks volunteering, paying it forward is the best thing we can do for our community and our country. All right, we'll go now to the...
Sir, if I could, just one point of clarification. The project cost that was cited in the agenda is not the complete cost of the project. There are a couple of other costs that are in the memo that was in the backup that you all provided. So we'll make sure that on the consent agenda Thursday, we have that total cost in the action item.
Did that bring any questions to mind, Commissioner
Just
Williamson?
we don't anticipate the total changing from what was reflected in the backup, correct?
No, sir,
Okay.
but the total will be 68,975, not the 59,975.
10-4, thank you.
All right. Any questions that brings about? Any comments? Okay, hearing none, the motion stands. All right, County Administrative Committee. Item number 1 is county small quantity generator contract. This is a discussion of approval of agreement with the West Florida Regional Planning Council for an annual small quantity hazardous waste generator assessment and notification program. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it's people like myself that own an automobile shop or maybe a lawnmower repair shop, something like that. We produce a small quantity of hazardous waste, which is usually waste oil. And this is an assessment of those done on an annual basis to make sure that we as a business make sure that that oil goes in the right place, gets disposed of properly, antifreeze, any type of small quantities that are generated. And I don't exactly know what they consider small or large, but I think your big automobile dealerships fall under a larger quantity. But in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's just making sure that those hazardous materials get put in the right place. So, any other comments or questions? If not, I'll move that to the consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 2 is surplus property, a yearly inventory. This is a discussion of this inventory. It's broken or damaged or out of date as surplus property items as recommended by the clerk of courts. Any comments or questions on that? Our clerk always does a thorough job of vetting that and making sure it gets on a auction site. So we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection. Seeing none, it passes. Item 3 is FWC Derelict Vessel Removal Grant Agreement number 17359, authorizing $5,295 in grant funds to remove a derelict vessel and authorize $1,975 in matching funds from the boater registration fee. The map of where that vessel is on your backup. Any comments or questions at this time? Seeing none, I'll move that to consent agenda on Thursday. Mr. Cooey, do you have a comment on that?
Jerry Cooey, 6049 Arnie's Way. I've been following this loosely. Tell me again why the taxpayers should remove a boat that belongs to somebody else. Why won't they do it?
Because evidently all the identification has been removed from the boat, so we cannot identify who the owner is, and it's been deemed as a hazard in the river.
No serial number left on it? Scratched it all off?
Yep.
Nice. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, that's the only time we do that. All right. And motion stands without objection. Hearing none, we'll move that to consent on Thursday. Item 4, maintenance, repair, and restoration of A4C Skyhawk aircraft display at the I-10 rest area. This is a discussion of reimbursement of $35,236.67 to FDOT for repairs and restoration of the subject aircraft performed by FDOT's department contractor. This is all in a contract from years ago to have that Skyhawk placed out there. The terms of the contract does require the county to do the maintenance as required, but it allows FDOT to have the hand at finding the contractor. I might say that it came out excellent. It looks really nice out there. I know it's a lot of money to spend, but it advertises Santa Rosa County's connection to Navy aviation, to people that pass through, and it's certainly a whole lot less than the 80 grand that the school board came up with to do a T-28 that's sitting on the ground. This thing's probably 50 feet, 60 feet in the air. So any comments or questions on that item?
On this repair, is anybody else chipping in? Is Escambia County chipping in?
According,
Okaloosa County chipping in?
no.
No, sir, this is Santa Rosa County. Escambia County got their own bill for the aircraft in the Escambia County rest stop. It was about $50,000.
So this one's all ours?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this was a, I believe, a 1996 contract.
It was 1996 and renewed in 2016, 20-year agreement with FDOT. If I could, sir, the agenda item requests or suggests reserve for contingencies as a funding source. If the board were to determine that this primary purpose of this A4 was to promote tourism in the area, which it is, that's our primary tourism rest stop. We have our turtle there and all of our tourism information. We could use tourism development tax revenue to pay for this refurbishment as opposed to general fund.
All right, comments or questions from the board? I I would support that if the county administrator feels that's a more appropriate funding source. And any not in favor of that? All right, Dan, I think you got your lead on that. Yes, ma'am.
Have you guys ever worked with the...
Turn your mic on. And
Sorry.
Okay, it's on. I need your name and address first.
Elise Teague, 3249 Bernath Drive.
Okay.
Just curious, have you guys ever worked with the Naval Aviation Museum regarding repairs?
That's part of the contract with the Naval Aviation Museum. They're the people that provided the aircraft
Correct.
and initially set it up. So the contract reads that we'll maintain that. Escambia County maintains theirs. I'm sure if they had the funding source to help us with that, they would. But I think providing the aircraft initially was probably what they counted as their part of the plan. So.
Because I know they assisted us at the Naval Academy with the restoration department, because they have a department specific for that. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And so
Perhaps-
I'll add, the Naval Aviation Museum was involved with FDOT's contractor to make sure that everything was done and the airplane was restored safe and presented appropriately.
Okay. And that thing stayed up there through a couple hurricanes, so somebody did a good job of putting her up there. All right, and you were saying as far as Thursday,
We can add to this that that it would be paid out of tourism development tax revenue if the board finds that the primary purpose is for tourism, to promote tourism.
all right. And,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
just, I don't know if you feel it's necessary or not, but to notify the Tourism TDC Board and for their discussion on this. It's just been customary that, I don't think they're going to have a problem with it, obviously, but just a thought.
How soon does the bill have to be paid due?
The letter says due upon receipt, but I think,
All right. Do we want to go ahead and make that an item for the TDC board and run it back through us, or just rubber stamp this and go with it? I think
Mr. Chairman, I would,
we got to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for jumping in. I would move to Thursday that we make a finding of fact that the primary purpose of the contract at hand is tourism development, and secondly, that we go ahead and approve the payment out of tourist development taxes.
That a motion without objection?
Without objection.
All right, we'll add that to the item number 4 as a add-on to the motion without objection. Hearing none, it passes. All right, item number 5 is the 2019-2020 FRDAP grant application recommendation. And the recommendation is improvements to Swenson Park through the fiscal year 2019-20 Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, known as FRDAP, the regular cycle. We have staff here today. Is there any comments or questions on that recommendation? Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Swenson Park is a very heavily used park in Santa Rosa Shores, down in near the Tiger Point area. We haven't done a lot out there in the last 4 or 5 years. This would really be transformative for Swenson Park if we're successful in getting this grant funding. So I support this completely.
And is this the annual $50,000 grant? Or is
This is a $200,000 grant request.
That's right,
They have
okay.
small ones and large ones, so we're going after the big ones.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda as noted. Hearing none, it passes. Item 6, sale of county property. This is a discussion of offering parcels for sale located throughout the county. This is item number 6 on the administrative committee. And I'll open the floor now to the board for comments or questions on how we want to dispose of this property.
We've looked into a couple of ways of doing this. In order to dispose of property, the county first has to declare it surplus. It has to be advertised for sale in a newspaper of general circulation for at least two times over at least a 2-week period. What we have discussed doing is to utilize the same online auction company that we utilize, the clerk's office has utilized for personal property very successfully for a number of years now. And I've confirmed with them that they will meet all the requirements as far as advertising to make it legal. This is a matter that the county is not required to, if we go through this process and it doesn't, the prices that are generated don't meet our requirements, we're not required to take it. We can reject all bids. So, and the company that we utilize adds a buyer's premium on top of the sale price, so it doesn't cost the county any funding to utilize that company. And they've got the resources and the expertise in doing this, so I think it probably would be best to utilize them. The clerk and I have discussed this, and Mr. Spencer may have some additional comments.
And these are all properties that were acquired through tax deed, or how?
Yes, sir. These are lots here and there that were acquired through tax sales.
And I would add, several of these, we've had inquiries from citizens and residents who are interested in purchasing. Several we just feel it's time to declare them surplus. We don't have any plans for them, and just to get them out there.
Good. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Williamson, then clerk of court.
Just a quick question. You mentioned these were all from tax sale, tax deed sale. Is this all of the ones in the county?
No, there are a number of other parcels, including a couple of fairly large parcels that we've acquired through tax sales. These are generated, number one, by requests, as Mr. Shebler said. People have indicated that they had an interest in this, and they were, we've got a couple of them that have structures on them that would have to be evaluated and maybe torn down, so we haven't included those in this, but I mean, these are saleable pieces, we think.
The reason for the question is just going back to how we select which properties end up getting offered for sale. And I guess it would be requests are generated. If no request is generated, then we just have a normal time that we would evaluate all the properties we have in our inventory and offer them up at
Well,
that time.
most of the properties that are owned by the county are retention ponds and roads and parks and other items that are not saleable. There's a very limited number of properties that we've acquired through tax deed sales or through, in some cases, a nuisance abatement perhaps. But, I mean, it's not like we have a whole bunch of properties that we're holding off of the market. We just don't have that many.
And that's why I was asking about it, is just from the standpoint of we hear folks saying, why don't you sell the property that you have before you buy more, and those types of talking points. And that was my understanding, that most of the property we own is wetlands, or property that is not really have a significant usable value because it can't be developed or what have you. So if it looks like we have property to dispose of, I'm all for it, absolutely. But if there's other properties that we have that are properties that could be developed, then I would say let's make sure that we're marketing those as well, instead of holding on to them. If we've deemed them to not have a significant value right now that we're going to be able to use, then dispose of it.
Yes, sir. This is the first four where we've had interest expressed. There'll be more to follow as we go through the county property report, as well as clearing out the Whittle building, for instance. We're almost complete with that process. That will be one that will come back to the board next month, probably, with a request to declare it surplus.
Great. All right, then I'm going to move those items to the consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 7, legislative priorities for the next legislative session. Who wants to lead this off?
I'll start it off, sir. I met with John Johnson last week. He was in town. Mark and I had a chance to talk to him about the upcoming legislative cycle. It's that time of year, although it'll be a regular session starting in March. Once the elections are complete, they'll have the legislature in Tallahassee in December for some training, some initial meetings, and then committee meetings will start in January. So I wanted to get this on our agenda this week to, just as a discussion item, to hear from you all those things that might be of interest to include in legislative priorities and requests going to the legislature next year in March. But John asked the sooner we can get that information to him, he'll start working on these even as the committee, before the committee weeks start, when he has those targets of opportunity. So I know we've talked about several road projects, maybe some additional drainage or water projects, and I didn't know what else might be of interest to start formulating projects and requests, and we'll bring that back to the board for final approval next month.
Well, the first two things that come to mind for me is continuing to keep it a priority to get the new regional wastewater system funded. I know we're going through Triumph funding for that and some other items, but I spoke last year about how, the importance of that, to maintain that for our economic development as our industrial parks grow. And I'd like to discuss it with the board as far as, I know it's a TPO item, but continuing to try to work to move up the 87 north-south connector on priority list, or get some special funding for that. When I look at this, we got, more and more growth down on the south end, regardless of what happens with Highway 90 from 87 north to 87 south. There's still going to be congestion in the case of evacuation. And I feel like all too long the state and FDOT has more or less cheated the citizens of Santa Rosa County in the fact that other counties have a continuous north-south connector to help evacuation and promote, movement throughout the county. But for all too long, Highway 90 has been used as that connector between the two. And I think it's time for them to see a little more urgency in that. So that's kind of where I'm at with those things. Commissioner Soller.
Mr. Chairman, talking about 87 South Connector, I think we all got an email last week from our Transportation Planning Department here in the state of Florida, where they were starting the design phase for Highway 87 North from Clear Creek up to Alabama line. Is that correct, Dan?
I did not see that email, sir. I'll track it down.
Just check on that, because I'm pretty sure that they're starting the design phase on that. So I'd like to see that one on the priority list. Obviously, our defense grants, DIG and DRG, and I wish there was a way we could get state funding for Woodbine Road. So, but those be my initial comments.
Commissioner Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just suggest that we all take a look at the legislative requests from last year,
right,
and see if there are any that we would pull off. The majority of our legislative requests are recurring, things like the beach renourishment, the need to establish a statewide program for local governments to assist them in pursuing those endeavors. So let's take a look at last year's program, see if there's anything that has fallen off, if there's anything that has reared its head in the last year that we can pursue. We're facing the homestead exemption on the ballot in November that the legislature put on there, so maybe a request that they tap the brakes on cutting taxes on the backs of local governments next year, maybe try it at the state level.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, the road funding, the build grant, I know that's a federal issue, and I don't know if we're going to be looking at combined legislative priorities or creating a federal legislative priorities as we have talked about maybe, but that would be something that would be pretty important. And then I share the concern and the support for the 87 connector project. but just would ask my fellow commissioners to keep in mind that there's a finite amount of District 3 Department of Transportation funding, and to prioritize where that funding should go and where the greatest benefit to residents would be. And when you look at right now the commuter traffic, the Woodbine Highway, I know it's a county road, but that one is obviously a pain point in the county. And as bad as that is, it's even worse on East Navarre Parkway with the daily commute supporting our military mission with 45,000, between 42 and 45,000 daily commuters in that section east of Highway 87. So if we direct DOT to look at the 87 connector, which would only serve to relieve about, I think, less than 20% of the daily commute traffic off of 90, then that's going to further delay results that we might see in other roadways that might be a higher priority. So just something to consider there as those move down. The design was funded for the project you're talking about, though, for the 87 connector. Yes. And then lastly, I would say with the talk of red tide and those type of things, anything to do with water quality that we could link with the road. So if there's any water quality projects that are any way that we could align with Woodbine Highway, then you could allow Johnson and Blanton to look for funding across multiple silos. Instead of being forced to only look for funding for a water quality project out of natural resources and ag, they would be able to look at other silos for funding opportunities. So that would be a consideration for cross-pollination there. That's it. Thanks.
Sam, do you have anything?
I'm kind of where Commissioner Lynchard was as far as, I know last year I think we had Woodbine Road. I think I asked for money for a sidewalk there on Spencer Field to try to get kids to that clubhouse area from where Norris Road is. That's sort of an unsafe section. And then all the other big projects I think we had, I believe last year we even asked for pay raises for Department of Correction personnel, because that's something a lot of citizens don't understand, how much we depend on those inmates from the state prisons to come help Public Works. But yet state prisons are having a very hard time retaining employees due to compensation. So probably don't have anything new and exciting to add this year, other than just unless everybody wants to sign on that Woodbine Road's our top priority, then I'll advocate for that.
All right, Don, I want to suggest that we line this up, taking Commissioner Lynchard's suggestion that we all review where we were last year. Maybe sit down individually with Dan and then put it on reschedule discussion for the first meetings in October.
Yes, sir. I'll email out to you all the legislative priorities from last year and look for that feedback. And I think as long as we're complete with an approved list by the end of October, then we're good to go.
Yeah, good idea to get started early, so, all right, then I'll move that to the, basically the consent agenda for the rescheduling in October without objection. Hearing none, passes. Item 8 is Polynesian Isles Boating Ordinance Amendment, discussion of approval to advertise for a public hearing on an ordinance amending Ordinance 2017-23, which amends the boating restrictions in Polynesian Isles Canal areas. Discussion, Commissioner Lynchard, this is your district. Do you got anything on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we just need to go ahead and schedule this public hearing. We've been going back and forth with FWC for quite some time on the language in that ordinance, and the residents are anxious to move forward, so I'd like to go ahead and get this scheduled.
Consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 9 is similar, only it's Santa Rosa Shores Canal MSBU Ordinance Amendment. Discussion of approval to advertise for a public hearing on an ordinance amendment, amending Ordinance 91-21, which establishes the Santa Rosa Shores Canal MSBU. We'll move that to the consent agenda. Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is basically just amending the language in their existing MSBU ordinance to marry it up with the true purpose of the MSBU from when it was originally enacted.
Members of the board, anybody? All right, seeing none, we'll move that to the consent agenda on Thursday. Without objection, hearing none, it passes. Okay, that closes out administration. We'll go to Economic Development Committee. Item number 1 is Project Runner Incentive Package. Shannon, you got the floor.
Well, good morning. Well, after a number of years, after working with this Project Runner for a couple of years now, I'd like to present a distribution company that is looking at 50 acres at the I-10 site of 87 and Interstate 10. The company is a warehouse distribution company that would employ basically 400 people over when they're up and running, 600 in the long run. Capital investment over $40 million. Construction of a 350,000 square foot building. The average wage is $46,000, which is 115% above our average annual wage. I believe this is would be one of our larger private employers in the county, outside retail. So this is, I would say, pretty exciting for things that are going on in terms of economic development occurring in Santa Rosa County. What I'm bringing forth today is asking for the commission to grant them 50 acres to locate their site. Also grant them a 10-year ad valorem tax abatement on the county school tax, along with passing the resolution that is attached in the incentive package, along with the $240,000 cash match that is required for the state incentives. And that $240,000 is paid out over a number of years, so there's not a single payment in a given year. So I know I was kind of all over the board there, but I'm trying to contain some excitement here. But any thoughts, questions?
Questions? Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, just, could you talk maybe about any clawback provisions that might exist if this were approved in the unlikely event that something would change from their standpoint? Just explain how the incentives would be provided and what protections Santa Rosa County would have on those.
Sure. For the ad valorem tax abatement, let's start there.
Sure.
The county would stop allowing the abatement or exemption of taxes to the company. So if let's just say in year 3, the company did not meet their requirements that was given, then that $250,000 ad valorem tax exemption would not be given to the company. In terms of the property, we would set a time frame of 3 to 5 years for the company to meet their goals of hiring. If those goals are not met, the prorated amount for the dollar for the purchase amount of the property is then given to the company for them to pay back. So if they, at this point in time, they're receiving 100% reduction, if they don't meet the job requirements or the average wage requirements, say they meet a 50% goal, they would have to pay back 50% the price of the land to the county.
Okay. Total allocation that we're looking at from Santa Rosa County?
Basically $5.2 million.
Okay. And last question, what's the property currently earning in the way of property taxes now?
0.
So this would be better than 0?
This would be better than 0.
Okay.
We had the Haas Center run an analysis based upon a suggestion, and they looked at an economic impact analysis of $75 million per year once the company gets up and running with the 400 positions.
I don't think it's possible to overstate how big of a win this would be for Santa Rosa County, and to finally get a company, along with the training that was just recently approved in the I-10 Industrial Park. There's going to be critical mass there now, and you're going to start to look at having more companies in there. And it shows the foresight that this board had years ago and bringing that online, and we had inventory to sell. I know it's a long sales cycle, and it's not closed until it's closed, but good work.
Thank you.
Because this would be a big win for the county in that area, and I wholeheartedly support your recommendation.
And this is the first step. This is continue to work with the company to lock down the contracts. Next item is to deal with the Triumph application also. But it is a long sales cycle, Commissioner Williamson. It's been 24 to 30 months that we've been speaking with this company to entice them to say why they should be located in Santa Rosa County. I mean, I think anytime, just like when you buy a house, anytime you want to invest, say, $40 million, $45 million, you want to make sure you have the best possible location. And when you buy a house, you're doing the same thing. So a company dropping $45 million, they got to make sure they're in the right spot.
One follow-up. What was the deciding factor in your mind why they chose Santa Rosa County? This is a significant project. Almost, was it 50 million? Almost 50 million in capital alone, so they could have gone anywhere. Why did they pick here?
You know, I would say my winning personality, but that's right. They love the colorful shirts. Sticking with them for the past 2 years. I mean, staying in constant reach with them, staying in constant contact with them over the past couple of years. Always reaching out to them. I think a lot of us fail by we make that initial contact and not following up, and it's continuing to follow up with the companies, and others may have just given up after 12 months, after 18 months. But I think us sticking with them, going down, visiting with them, touring the sites, becoming really interested in their business. When one of the individuals was taking us around, when we met with the CEO and the president, all the C-level executives, it was, let me introduce you to my friends from Santa Rosa County. That's how I was introduced. So I think that made a big difference there.
Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Shannon. Great job. To further answer Commissioner Williamson's question, other than your great personality, you got to have product. And if you don't have product, you're not going to be in the game. Product being inventory, the land. You got to have product. Location is key, right here, right on the interstate, and then workforce. And if you put those three things together, you have a good project to promote. So good job. Got to have the product. Thank you.
And let's not forget our friends at Gulf Power that, did the site certification or worked with us on site certification, because I'm sure that made a big change there too. So. All right. Shannon, go ahead. Do you want to go ahead and explain item number 2 while you're up there?
I've been working with Erica on this, so I'll let her take control.
And then we'll
Good
come
morning.
back and make a motion on it too.
So the Triumph applications are part 2 to Shannon's agenda item, and because we're not allowed to offset school district or water management district taxes, our request is to submit a Triumph pre-application that would use Triumph funds to offset those taxes for a period of 10 years for Project Runner. That's part 1 of the agenda item. And part 2 is a request to revise our submitted I-10 infrastructure application with the significant capital investment that we expect from Project Runner. We are able to actually reduce the scope of our infrastructure project. And so we're actually requesting to amend the application to reduce the cost from a little over $5 million to a little over $3 million for the infrastructure improvements at I-10. And that's all.
All right. Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, sir. Two questions. One, I'll ask for, I forget, is, and I apologize if it was in the backup and maybe I overlooked it, but I thought about this as Erica was talking about. I remember asking Triumph for the school tax thing, but is the city of Milton offering to work with us on this project any in the way of, like I thought about it with the wastewater treatment facility, and I know they came to us a few months ago and asked us for $2 million, and we put this as legislative priority, but obviously it's a big priority for us for economic development. And I apologize, I hadn't been here long enough to maybe catch, we haven't went through this before, but what, I know something about we reserve capacity. I mean, do they work with us on this, or are they still hitting them with tap fees, or how's it?
Well, I don't know the answer regarding tap fees, but I think the deal that this board made with the city of Milton for capacity, when land was provided for the relocation, we haven't used all of that capacity. And this project, this large distribution facility, is not going to be a large contributor into the wastewater stream. Even with 400 people, you're basically just talking about toilets and water. It's not going to be a large contributor. So I don't think that's a factor in this case. I can close the loop with the city manager to make sure that there's capacity. I'm guessing Shannon may have already talked to them about that there's capacity for this project in the current wastewater treatment stream.
Yeah, I apologize. My question wasn't about if there was capacity, but do they work with them as far as, okay, we're not going to charge you? I know that was a frustration me and Shannon dealt with right after I got elected, because we had Dick's Sporting Goods and all that wanted to come, and we worked with them on a retail incentive. Pace Water, in that case, didn't work with them at all on the tap fee, and I believe it was around $68,000, I may be off a little bit, that they charged them for that project. And I'm wondering if the city of Milton offers, when we're going after, over $5 million worth of value to attract this company, is the city of Milton helping us with that at all, since we are to the tune of a couple $1 million helping them with this new facility?
Commissioner Parker, I could help you some with that. I've talked to the new city manager, Mr. Jorgensen, and I think current city leadership is willing to work, to see jobs. As Dan said, we have capacity and reserve for the sewerage, and in the past, East Milton Water, I've got a good rapport with them. They worked with us on the Geo Prison on putting, instead of getting everything up front, putting that on a matrix to pay for that tap fee. So they won't waiver the tap fees, but I think we have an interest from East Milton Water to probably put them on a, break it down over several years for them. So.
Just thought it may be worth asking at least if they would prorate the tap fees. It's still, anyway, I thought it would be prudent. Maybe check with that and get back with us if they're willing to do something on that. I know obviously we're all trying to work together for this project, but we're all trying to work together to bring jobs too.
Well, I think anything that we can show that the community as a whole is working together, it shows a good story. I didn't mention that even Project Runner has already put us in touch with one of their suppliers wanting to be next door with them. So if Project Runner comes, a supplier could come. So telling that good story of the community as a whole goes a long way.
Well, I think it would be good too if you had it when you went to them with this incentive package instead of piecemealing it. If we maybe had that when we went to them with this to say, here's the city of Milton's commitment. But I apologize, I didn't think to ask you this ahead of time. So, second question, and this may be something that we would deal with at a later date. I don't know, maybe you could help me with this, but just based on the map, they would have access there at the back of the property, as well as I'm guessing they would have 3 access points to the property as far as from the west side there at 87, but then on the north side specifically, would they have 2 roadways on the north side of that 50-acre parcel?
That map is just a preliminary map of where they're located. Still working with Michael, and part of the ask today is the Triumph application, putting the additional roads infrastructure. So that could change a little bit, but this company will have semis running continuously in and out. So making sure that they have multiple entry points that they could easily turn in, turn out is my goal.
My thought process behind that question was, and all I have is the map here in front of us with the 50 acres that's designated, was if we looked at the remainder 37 acres, they would only have one access point to 87 that wouldn't have to come through that property. And so my thought was, would we, as we're talking about conveying this property, and again, I guess maybe this is too preliminary, but at some point, I mean, when we start offering it, we got to get to it. Would we retain or at least grant an easement that whoever would be looking at that 37 acres, whether it be a supplier or whatever, if they need more than one access point, would be able to access that property through this?
Yes, I mean, it'd be a public, public road that they continue to.
So there wouldn't be any chance that it becomes vacated, for lack of a better terms, and structured out?
Commissioner Parker, have you been out there and seen the new road?
I have.
Okay, well, that road would continue, and then on the south end of the property, down near the firehouse, we've got accessibility there. So, you know, anybody in here would still have access to that complete road that runs parallel with Highway 87, and then also the additional infrastructure that we would put in if we got the grant from Triumph. So, yeah, everybody would still have access to all three.
Okay, that was the only thing I wanted to verify, that and the sewer tap.
Shannon, while I have you up here, we approved possibility of a spec building and went out on that. Can you give us some background on how well that's coming along and how this changes that?
Good ask. Still want to move forward with the spec building. The second entry point that Commissioner Parker was just identifying is where the spec building was initially going to be placed. Based upon Project Runner going in, I want to move it to the southern entry point into the industrial park. So working to just basically pick up the building and put it to that south entry point. I think having a supplier there plus putting up a 50,000 square foot building, things are rolling. Let's don't mess it up.
Okay, and how well is that coming along? Have you had any interest in?
RFQs available. I've spoken to quite a few individuals, but we have not published the RFP yet. Okay. Just because I knew Project Runner was coming to the board in the coming weeks, just trying to get all the details worked out. But hopefully once we get a no from Triumph for the infrastructure, and enable us to put the spec building, like I said, at the southern entry point.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, then we'll go back to item number 1. Do we have anybody from the public who'd like to speak on either of these before we move? All right, on item number 1, the Project Runner incentive package, I'd like to move that to the consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, it passes. On item 2, the Triumph pre-submittals, pre-application submittal and I-10 application revision. Move that without objection to Thursday's consent agenda. Seeing none, it passes. We'll move on to item number 3, EFI Team Florida Marketing Co-op Fund application. This is a discussion of an application with EFI Team Florida Marketing Co-op Fund for Workforce Development and Adult Education Public Awareness Campaign. Dan, you got anything on that? Oh, Shannon, okay.
Earlier this year, we joined Enterprise Florida's team marketing partnership. With that, we were allowed to apply for a grant to the dollar amount that we joined at. So the grant amount is up to $25,000. As previously discussed in this meeting or numerous meetings, workforce education is a key component for any company, any community to continue to grow. So with this grant, we would like to promote our career academies, promote the adult education. You'd be surprised by, even myself, by what goes on in the career academies that the parents are not aware of. My daughter, she would freak out if I was about to mention this, but you know, she comes home from 11th grade and asks her what is going on in biotech today at Pace High School. All I hear is it's going good. Well, I think it's going more than good. So the point of all that is to make sure that we as parents know what is going on, what is happening in the career academies, and to push that information out to parents so that we can encourage our kids as they may or may not listen, but let them know what is going on in the career academies to encourage them to take part in it. And then also, the second of it is, the adult education is to let them know that that is taking place in the county, and if you do not have a high school diploma, take the GED test, and so we can continue to push out the workforce for project runners or for anything else we bring down the line.
All right, comments or questions? Seeing none, then we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection. Final item is TDO landscape maintenance contract. This is discussion of award of the TDO landscape maintenance contract to Prestige Landscaping LLC for the next fiscal year. The contract dates from 10/1/18 to 9/30/19. Pretty much boilerplate. Any comments or questions on this contract? Commissioner Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it brief, but I just want to reiterate, I believe I made the similar comments last year, and I just want to reverberate that. When we discuss this exact contract, it's just well, first, Julie, I appreciate you having a higher threshold of expectation, and obviously that's why we've gotten to this action today. But I just want to go back to the comments I made last year, especially now that we're up well into the six-figure amount, is that I just think this board should be looking at bringing this in-house for this cost. I feel like you could easily get 2 to 3 full-time, I mean even 2 with plenty of equipment and operating cost, employees that were dedicated, even if that was hired on through Public Works and then reimbursed through the tourism department, but that was dedicated solely for, at your discretion, these issues. And the only reason I probably feel that way is maybe it's more financially prudent in my mind, but also more responsiveness. I know throughout the year, I had the opportunity this year to have a 1-year stay on the Tourist Development Council, I like how I phrased that, and it's coming to an end. But you know, I know that this is something we heard several times, was that you were battling this, and I feel like if we had it in-house, we could have much more responsiveness to that. And I just think at this funding level, this is something that I would like to see the board look at. But I know last year I don't think was an appetite for that. It's obviously why we didn't do it. I just want to reverberate my comments on that. And so that's it.
All right. Any other comments? Julie, do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I know this is a large gap and jump, and if the contract and the level of service were to be given as desired and per the contract, then I would not be standing before you today. It would have probably just went for renewal again.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Sam, I share a lot of your concerns there with the amount. Stephen, could we get you to come up with a ballpark, or maybe you already have, of what it would cost to bring this in-house and bring on a dedicated crew? And it may be that we can't be competitive in-house with privatizing the contract, but I think it's worth a look.
I have not run numbers on this. I will be happy to do that and get the information to Mr. Shabler as quickly as possible.
And I know there are certifications involved also that we would have to get to perform work in the right-of-way and the median on 98, because it's a state road that we don't currently have. So it's not just the salary and equipment. There are some other things involved there. But I would like to take a look at it.
Okay. I know it won't be for this year, but I mean, if the board felt like at least there was an appetite to explore that, maybe to sort of set us up for next year, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair.
This is a 1-year contract?
1-year contract, yes, sir.
Commissioner.
Yeah, and what Commissioner Lynch was talking about the FNGLA, the Florida Nursery Grower Landscape Association. Now to do work in in state roadways, you do have to have that certification, and that process will take at least a year for somebody to get certified if it was in-house. We know a little bit about that. I don't think you're going to have the problems we've had before, though. I think it's just, taking the lowest bidder, you get what you pay for in some instances, and I think now with the company that you have at the price that's set, expectations should be very high, and I don't think we're going to experience the same problems we've had before, because it's priced right now.
All right, well, I certainly don't know the business, but I thought $72,000 for taking care of that was plenty of money, and I agree with Sam and Lane that, it almost doubling the cost, not quite, but pretty near, that it's something to look at, because we got other ones coming online with the one on the fill and everything. So if this is the price of one, and we can expect to pay that again on Highway 90 over towards Escambia County, now we're up to, $260,000, $250,000, $250,000 to do maintenance. And if Stephen thinks he could bring people on and then in the off times use them other places, I think it's a good thing to look at. All right, Mr. Furman, you got your marching orders.
Yes, sir. I'll sure look into it, and hopefully with the salary adjustment that this board has provided to the employees, maybe we'll be able to attract some qualified candidates, and that'll certainly help our overall operations.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I also add that we have a lot of issues with so many accidents right there around the Navarre area of it, that we have vehicles pulling into those medians on a regular basis because of accidents, and it's breaking our irrigation heads, which sometimes, I think a few months ago, I replaced 300 irrigation heads at once. So this is a continuous problem, ongoing problem, and our plant materials, there's a lot that need replacing right now. Our FDOT reports haven't came back that great. So we're looking down the road here at, I would say, a few $1,000s in just dead plant material that needs to be replaced between the Gulf Breeze medians and between the Navarre medians. That's where we're looking at right now. So I don't think it's a bad idea to look into bringing this in-house, maybe possibly in a year if it's feasible and if we have people that have the right credentials to do that and work out the medians, because this ongoing plant and irrigation is going to be very costly on an annual basis as well.
All right. Dan, what do we want to do with this for Thursday? Just move this contract for this year and let you guys work on it for another year? Okay.
Yes, sir. I recommend that you consider moving the item as recommended, and we will look at, through the budget process this next year, what is affordable as far as in-house, what is, I think this budget for this coming year that was approved strikes the right balance of insourcing versus outsourcing.
Okay.
This contract is part of the outsourcing piece for next year.
All right. Great. Then I'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection. Hearing none, it passes. All right, this time engineers report. Anybody need to take a break? Keep moving. All right, Mr. Blaylock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Our first item is a discussion of engineering design work orders to Hatchmont and McDonald in the amount of $36,780 for two Peter Prince Field taxiway projects. The Florida Department of Transportation entered into JPAs back in 2015. They programmed their monies this year to fund 80% of the two project costs, one of which is T-Hanger Taxiway. That's the common taxiway between the T-Hangers. And in addition to that, to fund the east-west connector between Taxiway A and Taxiway B on 1836. It's going to be the south end of the runway, and it allows exiting and entering our traffic to exit from the runway onto a taxiway without going to the full end of the runway. They're going to fund 80%, and Santa Rosa County will match with the Peter Prince Enterprise Fund.
Questions from members of the board? All right, seeing none, we'll move that to the consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, passes. Item 2,
Item number 2 is a discussion of the GSA Tech Consultants Task Order GEO 18-005 in the amount of $29,980. This task order will provide an aerial survey for the central landfill Class 1 and Class 3 disposal areas. It provides for a new topographic survey that's used to compute the remaining life of each of the disposal cells, and provide a base reference for the expansion of the landfill gas collection system and control system for Phase 5, Cell C, and also for the final closure of central landfill. They're going to review the drone data. We are proposing that we'll fly our LiDAR and allow the property appraiser to also fly it at or near the same in the same week, and we'll compare the two data sets to see if we can use the property appraisers in the future.
okay.
And also, it'll be funded through this landfill enterprise account.
All right, and any comments, questions? Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. I just want to know, I don't see our property appraiser, Mr. Brown, or any of his representatives here today, but I'm just going to go on record by saying thank you, at least that this is something that they're basically volunteered to do to try to help save the county money. And I know we're going to have this comparison to see if we can use it in the future, but I think we are very blessed by some of our constitutional officers, such as Mr. Brown and Mr. Spencer and Mr. Nichols, that I have seen take very deliberate steps just in my short time here to try to save the county money. So I just wanted to say thank you to him, even though he's not here, for trying to help us with this.
Roger, can I ask you this? Now, Geotech will outsource the aerial work, or do they do it in-house?
That would be outsourced to a aerial photographing company.
Well, since they're going to also review the data, the drone data produced by the county appraiser, do they need a comparison? Could the county run that and give it to Geotech and let them analyze it prior to outsourcing, spending the 30 grand?
No, we do not have that capability in-house. Part of that fee that you saw there, let me back up to that item.
29.
Part of that fee associated with that is a ground survey.
Okay.
We're talking about,
All right.
they're going to have to do horizontal and vertical control within the landfill before they fly the LiDAR.
Okay.
In addition to that, then develop a topo. They'll develop 2 different topos, and then a third topo, if you will, represents what the landfill will look like on closure. And it's that differential between those digital terrain models that will dictate how much airspace we have remaining, which is what we have to report annually to DEP.
Okay. I misunderstood it that the 29.9 was the amount they needed to outsource.
Oh, absolutely not. The LiDAR data collection portion of that 29.9 is on the order of magnitude of $8,000 to $9,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll move it to consent on Thursday without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item number 3, please.
Item number 3 is the discussion of the state financial assistant recipient grant agreement between Santa Rosa County and the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, FDACS, in the amount of $34,480.64. We use this money to fund our arthropod mosquito control activities in Santa Rosa County, and we request authorization for the chairman to sign all necessary documents.
Absolutely, because we've been growing some skeeters this year, I'll tell you. Ooh, there's a big one. All right, move that, unless there's any comments, questions, move it without objection. Hearing none, move to consent on Thursday.
Item number 4 is a discussion request to use the South Santa Rosa Service Center front parking lot and its restroom facilities on Saturday, October 13th, for a Household Hazardous Waste Amnesty Day. We've done this a number of times, and the event schedule will be from 8 a.m. to noon at the South Santa Rosa Service Center located at 5819 Gulf Breeze Parkway in Midway. This is not a recycle day, but a special day for disposal of household hazardous waste.
All right, and we'll make sure that's all noted on our county website for items that are allowed and the quantities allowed, and the times and the dates will be on there. So I'll move that without objection to consent agenda on Thursday. Hearing none, passes. Item 5.
Item number 5 is a discussion of the construction contract award to Site and Utility LLC for the Camden Drive Outfall Project. Phase 1 in the amount of $866,797. Back in September of 16, the board approved the engineering services with BDI for the Camden Drive drainage projects. They included the surveying, design, construction plans and specs, bidding, bid support, construction administration, inspection, and permitting activities. They prepared the documents. We bid the project. On August 28th, the county received bid from 11 different contractors, and we have a recommendation for Site and Utility LLC.
All right, comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll move that to the consent on Thursday without objection. Commissioner? Okay. Pass this one? Okay. Without objection, hearing none, it passes the consent agenda. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Everybody be back in here at 25 after, please. All right, if everybody will please be seated, we'll go ahead and get started back with it again. Mr. Blaylock, if you'll go ahead and continue with item number 6, I believe we're on.
Yes, item number 6 is a discussion of additional engineering services from Atkins for the Pace Patterson project in the amount of $9,460. As you know, the Pace Patterson was one of 4 hazard mitigation grant drainage projects funded as a result of the April 2014 flooding. On September 5th of this year, we had the Tropical Storm Gordon produce flash flooding conditions along Pace Lane. Recently installed stormwater collection system performed as designed, did a very good job. However, a detailed review of it is in order because we had additional stormwater coming from the north that needs to be evaluated for inclusion in those existing ponds. They have submitted these additional engineering fees to complete that study and evaluation. There's $150,000 remaining in that grant, and we anticipate getting state participation not only for this additional engineering fees, but we would hope that we'd be able to do the construction improvements as well from those dollars. So we recommend this for the consent agenda.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, passes to the consent on Thursday. Number 7.
Number 7 is the discussion of the engineering services from Baskerville Donovan for the Tonkin Bayou East Channel restoration in the amount of $689,500. The Board of County Commissioners submitted RFQs. They conducted interviews and selected Baskerville Donovan as the #1 firm, and we're recommending approval of their engineering proposal in the amount of $689,500.
All right, we'll move that without any comments, questions, seeing none other than Jim Waits here today. Jim, thank you guys for all your hard work on that. We appreciate it. Move that to the consent agenda on Thursday without objection. Seeing none, it passes. Item 8.
Item number 8 is a discussion of the proposed Gulf Power easement on the Bay Street property, that particular tax ID number. The Venetian Way Coronado Drive Drainage Project is also one of the 4 aforementioned HMGP funded projects from the April 14th flooding. The improvement's going to be new construction, removal and upgrade of our existing stormwater systems, ditches and outfalls into Santa Rosa Sound. Design was completed by Southern Site, and a bid was awarded to Site and Utility LLC. Gulf Power has an existing 10-foot easement they acquired on that lot, and we're requiring additional study to look at the impact. Gulf Power has requested an easement, a blanket easement over that lot, and then we'll refine it to the limits of their construction. So we recommend approval of the Gulf Power easement on our Bay Street property.
Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions about that particular item, so we can move that one, but then if I can make a comment when we're done.
Okay, I'll move that without objection to the consent agenda, so move. Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to mention while we're in the neighborhood, we had at our last meeting the approval of the award of the construction contract for Settlers Colony contingent on FEMA approval and DEM approval of an extension of the construction period. And that approval was granted by FEMA last week, so we are going to be able to move forward with that construction project. We're waiting on DEM approval, I guess, the final contract language, but tentative start date within a month or so. Sheila, thank you for all your work on that and pursuing that extension, was able to preserve a multi-million-dollar grant opportunity. So that's going to be great for the area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate the update. All right, we'll move on now to item number 9.
Item number 9 is a discussion of the engineering services from Baskerville Donovan for the Holly by the Sea easement maintenance plan in the amount of $63,000, and we recommend rejecting the bids opened on May 17, 2018. The board had previously approved the preparation of an RFQ for the clearing of those dedicated drainage maintenance easements at an estimated cost of $619,000 from Road and Bridge Reserve. Staff prepared it in-house and opened on May 17th of this year. And during meetings with other Camden Drive and those other Holly by the Sea with the Corps of Engineers, it was relayed to us that any drainage ditch within Holly by the Sea would be deemed jurisdictional, and they would take a close look at it. The RFP that was submitted for these bids did not include the permitting associated with it, and the scope of services proposed by BDI includes grouping these into the maximum amount that we can do within the permit process for wetland jurisdiction, coordinate with the regulatory agencies for permitting issues, meeting with the Holly by the Sea Homeowners Association, and related to those clearing activities that were anticipated within this project. The $619 was set aside from road and bridge reserves, and we'd anticipate using this to complete the project.
All right, comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner?
many of y'all remember that this was a request that I had brought forward, that we identify all of these stormwater drainage easements and prioritize them and to try to provide costs to get some of them cleaned out for the first time and get some progress from an ongoing maintenance standpoint. I just want to say thank you to Stephen for the maintenance report that you have ongoing. I think that's a great tool to show the progress that we're doing, and to staff and Roger for your help with coordinating this so we can get these projects moving forward and bring some relief to Holly by the Sea. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Lynchard.
Just wanted to make sure everyone understood that the Corps of Engineers consider ditches wetlands at this point. This is something that we discussed a couple years ago with the Waters of the U.S. Act, I think, that was that garnered a lot of attention. So if every ditch is a wetland.
Let me qualify, every ditch that was holding water, just to expand it, but that's almost.
Most ditches down in the south end of the county hold water, certainly after a good quarter inch of rainfall. So that will make maintenance a challenge if we have to permit maintaining existing ditches.
Commissioner Parker.
Only comment, and I guess this is sort of one of those where you're just putting a plug, is hoping that it slowly gets conveyed to citizens. I know that a lot think, just like I did before I was elected, about the expediency. Does this, we're talking about something that I believe we were even in Tiger Point that day. I don't know why I think that. Yeah. So over a year ago, and I think especially with us having, these midterm elections coming up, and a lot of folks, jump on elected officials for this wasn't done or that wasn't done. But I mean, this shows you this board over a year ago approved this, and it's just now getting to us to basically approve an amendment again to try to move forward with something that hasn't even started. Does this time frame seem normal on a project like this?
I'll defer to Dan, but if you'd like me to go ahead and answer, I'll answer that. This is not typical. This is an atypical situation that created by, I do believe, the Army Corps of Engineers, additional scrutiny of the ditches and the swales in the South Santa Rosa County.
Yeah, and again, this is, I share with the public all the time. We've got quite a few members of the public that are here today, even some of them that I think this may be their first meeting, and this is the frustration that we experience. This is, again, Commissioner Williams just said this is something he brought. It was a very, I don't want to say contentious meeting, but it was a well-attended meeting by the south end of the county, and unfortunately, as most folks, especially in Holly by the Sea, when they drive through there and they're looking at these overgrown ditches and things we're talking about, they're not worried that you approved it a year ago. They're worried that there is no progress, and I don't think it's by any fault of any member right here sitting on this board. It's just the unfortunate speed of multiple layers of bureaucracy. So I just wanted to point that out. And I know some of you are dealing with different issues today that we've discussed in the hallway, so this should give you great insight about the speed of government.
And sometimes there's casualties of that delay.
Well, and, while we're explaining things to the constituents, our position as commissioners to, take part in FACT or NACO, This conversation reminds me of about a year ago at NACO. One of our guest speakers was a fellow from the Army Corps of Engineers, bragging on how well they got along with communities and how fast they promoted things. And when I had a chance to rebuttal him, he spoke briefly about my rebuttal and then asked for another question. So I don't think that caused any delay in this program, but I certainly let him know that I didn't agree with his comment. So, all right. Any other comments, questions, Jerry?
First of all, I believe the Trump administration waived that rule, didn't they, from a federal level, the water rule? Right. So, well, I understand that, but tell the Army Corps of Engineers that it's no longer a rule and to stop it. Here's the frustration that I have in this. I try to own a piece of property that's not in a swamp, so I don't have to worry about it a whole lot. But I feel for folks here. We have watched a $15,000 study over 2 years ago where nothing was accomplished. We watched a $30 million expense by an engineering firm. In that very meeting you were talking about, Mr. Parker, a nice lady stood up and said, well, what are the recommendations for the $30,000 that we spent? And there was 0 recommendations made at that time because apparently we, the county, did not ask the engineering firm for recommendations, and now we're at another $60,000, give or take, just to study an issue. So there's a little more frustration. I get your time issue. I understand the Army Corps of Engineers. It was under Obama rules that they got their new handful of hammers and they were hammering tacks everywhere they went. But that's out of line. That's not the case now. But the sheer volume of money, and we haven't cleared a ditch yet. We've virtually done anything. We've allowed ourselves to become paralyzed over the Army Corps of Engineers. And I think we need to reach out to the federal government way above their head and get them a copy of, you're no longer under that rule. It is ridiculous, Commissioner Lyncher, that a ditch is not a wetland because it has water in it. That's the purpose of a ditch. But under the Obama rule, it was a wetland. That's no longer the case. Maybe we need to step our argument up a little bit higher. We're spending a tremendous amount of money here. We've taken way too long to do it, and we're having a lot of rain. It's not getting any better. And it just needs to move forward, and we need to spend less money on what this thing is engineering. I'd much rather hire prisoners from the jail with some pickaxe and some shovels to go clean it than I would go through all of this. I mean, I think we only pay $70,000 a year for a 7-man crew of a prison crew. Put them on 365 days a year at Holly by the Sea and let them go to it with hand equipment. We'd be far better off than we are today. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right. I'll move that item number 9 without objection, noting the comments made to Thursday's consent agenda, and do so without objection. Seeing none, it passes. Item 10.
Item number 10 is a discussion of LAP agreement and a resolution to accept federal funds in the amount of $666,467. That's, you see the breakdown, $599 for construction, $67,451 for CEI through the local agency program. That's the LAP program as administered by FDOT. It is a reimbursement program through local agencies, which is Santa Rosa County, to utilize federal funds to design and construct highway infrastructure projects. The LAP agreement is a contract between FDOT, Santa Rosa County to utilize those federal funds for such projects. This particular project is a sidewalk on the west side of County Road 197A and Spring Street in Jay from School Street northward to the existing sidewalk network in the town of Jay. Project was originally designed in 2012, with this portion being taken out because the bids exceeded, and was bid as an alternate bid, and no monies were available. FDOT has since provided the funding to complete the original project with this LAP agreement. The LAP agreement for design was approved in February of 2017, and when they approved it for design, I would note that design was done in-house. If the physical impact of this project is the funding, the $599,000 is going to be not quite enough, so we're estimating a $50,000 over exceedance, and with that amount, $50,000 coming from Santa Rosa County. With CEI, this is a requirement for construction, inspection, and engineering. We're estimating a $30,000 shortfall on it too coming from Santa Rosa County. We list the funding options for those overruns, Area 1 impact fees. There's dollars available in that fund. District 3 funds for LOST and recreation, as well as possibly road and bridge reserves. And so we need that direction from the board to proceed.
Commissioner Salter, this is your district. Care to comment?
First of all, it's an important project for the town of Jay, and we've done some sidewalk work up there in the past. I would recommend that we look at the impact fee, because it's been sitting there a long time and hasn't been utilized, so that'd be my recommendation.
Any other comments? Roger, anything else you need from the board? And did I understand you right, the CEI is going to be done in-house?
No, I did not say that. The CEI must be done outside. We don't have that expertise, yeah.
Okay.
We did the original design in-house.
Yeah, all right. All right, comments, questions? Hearing none, I'll move that to consent agenda on Thursday. And with the board's indulgence, I'd like to back up to item number 9. Recommend that we move that to the regular agenda on Thursday, just for clarification on Mr. Cooey's comments. If engineering can get us some clarification on the Trump administration removing that requirement of going through unless somebody can answer it now. I mean,
I can certainly answer the fact that he may or may not have removed, which I do believe he did remove that requirement. The requirement still applies for jurisdictional wetland swells. That is an interpretation made by the Army Corps of Engineers field agents. We've got to counter that with an environmental consultant to say yes or no. So that's what it is. The default is wetlands, is how they've taken. We don't have that expertise to go to bat, which is why we hired a consultant and an environmental consultant to actually argue, is it or is it not a wetland? Now, the Trump administration's ruling applies to non-wetlands, and those ditches that are non-wetlands that are maybe holding water for a short period of time. But there's, 3 different parameters: actual physical presence of water connecting to waters of the United States. Hydric soils can be the link that connects a jurisdictional wetland to waters of the United States, as well as vegetation. So those are 3 expert areas that we're going to need some consulting assistance.
And our consultant has confirmed that they are jurisdictional wetlands.
Well, they haven't yet. They haven't completed all the maintenance, but there are jurisdictional wetlands there. Yes, there are some that are clearly going to require the Army Corps of Engineer permitting process. Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, just to clear up one thing, that $30,000 that we talked about for this initial study, when we got the results of that back, that also came with staff's recommendation. We had a suite of recommendations that followed along with that this board agreed to and implemented and funded and implemented. This particular, the stormwater drainage easements, Corps of Engineers has moved the finish line on us a little bit here and requiring a little bit more stringent review and permitting requirements than they had in the past. And it's likely they could loosen those back up next week and things would be moving again. It seems like there's no rhyme or reason to it, but this is something that staff had moved forward on. We had gone through the procurement process, and it's just, we received a range of bids from like 50 to 130 or something like that. It was definitely something that needed some additional structure. But there were quite a few recommendations that came forward from that meeting that this board agreed to, and several of them have been implemented.
Okay. And I'm good with that. I just want to make sure we vetted that. Me and the Army Corps, I guess is the best way to say it, me and the Army Corps aren't buddies. So, All right?
Let me differentiate recommendations. When we wrote the contract for the engineering firm to look at that, and I didn't disagree that there was a lot of questions about who owned what, we did not require the engineering firm to bring forward a list of recommendations that I could find. There were recommendations by staff after that meeting, but the fine citizens of Santa Rosa County paid $30,000 for a study, and the engineering firm, I was standing by the citizen who asked the engineering firm, where are the recommendations? There were none because they weren't required to. My point in bringing up that comment was we need to do better. If we're going to spend $30,000 for an engineering study, it shouldn't be X is connected to Y. It should be how we're going to fix this. That was my point in that. Thank you.
All right. The original motion will continue standing. Thank you. All right, item number 11, please.
I apologize. Item number 11 is a discussion of the Hawks Landing Phase 2 final plat. This is a 47-lot subdivision located in Working District 1. It's located 2.2 miles north on Highway 90 on Chumuckla Highway. You turn east on Hawks Landing Circle, and the property is located at the end of Hawks Landing Circle, and we recommend an inclusion in the consent agenda.
All right, comments, questions? Seeing none, so moved. Item 12.
Item number 12 is a discussion of the aforementioned Hawks Landing Phase 2 paved road and drainage maintenance. They have completed their improvements, and we are prepared to recommend acceptance into the county maintenance system.
All right, move that to consent agenda on Thursday. Seeing
Yes,
comment
sir.
from Commissioner Parker.
Apologize, I didn't have a chance to talk with county engineer ahead of time about this. I just, one of those questions where you'll have to forgive me if it's if I should have known better, but I'm going to use Ashley Plantation and Laurelwood. Since this is in my district, I'll use two other subdivisions in my district that we've had a good bit of citizen friction after heavy rains due to drainage maintenance plans. And I mentioned Laurelwood because that's maybe a quarter mile or so west of this, and even during this last tropical storm rain, which I understand that was a major rain event. But there's areas there where the roads get so deep of water, and actually, for full disclosure, you have a relative in there that literally they can't access ingress or egress the subdivision because of the depth of the water, and it's like we say, don't be driving through these water things when you don't know how deep they are, and it's several feet, and I've went out there, and I know this is something where I've kind of vaguely remember we've had some dialogue over the last couple of years with, maybe those ponds weren't quite right, and I don't want to go into extreme detail because I'm really not prepared for that, but I know we've had some vague discussions on that over the last couple of years, and I know we've had some discussions, and Mr. Furman's been involved in, even out at Ashley Plantation, with some issues about the drainage. And so where I'm getting at with all this is these are established neighborhoods that then we had some major rain events, and we realized there were some unfortunate failures, and now we're kind of looking at earlier, we know the speed that things get done is usually not palatable to what citizens expect. So I say all that to lay out the question of, right here we're talking about discussion of Hawks Landing Phase 2, paved road and drainage maintenance. I believe what we're asking today is for us to accept that, correct?
That is correct.
And I mean, this is brand new, so we really haven't even had time to see if it will operate correctly. Is there, and so I guess maybe this is for the attorney, is there a legal reason why we're having to accept this quickly? Because I mean, I just named two other subdivisions that are relatively new in my district that we've accepted and then realized, unfortunately, there's some problems. Could we not say, let's wait a little bit. We intend to accept it, but we want to make sure that it functions correctly.
We have a 2-year warranty period with the developer for any type. Excuse me? We have a 2-year warranty period with the developer for the retentions and the roads, retention ponds and roads.
Yeah, but is there something that causes us to have to accept it this quickly on the front end?
We have to accept the plat for them to be able to sell the property on the basis of that plat. As far as the
drainage, I'm really only concerned with the drainage plan.
The 2-year period of the warranty is the county's guarantee or the county's backstop in regard to that.
And Commissioner, just from a practical standpoint, the information that we have from the development community is they will not purchase lots and pull building permits on any public infrastructure subdivisions that have not been accepted by the county. So that's, must we do it? Perhaps not, but I'm just saying from a practical standpoint, none of those builders in that phase would proceed with developing homes without that assurance.
It's
It has to do with some of the loans and those sorts of things, I do believe.
What would be different, I understand it's a different developer, but say actually that literally abuts this development directly north is the Plantation.
Pace Mill Creek.
Directly north actually is the Henry Home subdivision we talked about the other week.
Pace Mill Creek.
Now that one, he maintained it privately, correct?
That is correct.
So I mean, some builders will do it.
Right, but with that, they must have a homeowners association recorded, articles of incorporation, all those sorts of things that they give to the lending institution. They're not going to loan money on homes that aren't in maintained subdivision, either public or private.
They would just have to do an HOA.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one with that concern. We're getting these, and Ashley Plantation's probably the best thing where I know we had accepted it and now there's been things with DEP and then, well, the developer, I guess, is going back and taking care of these things, but now we are, we're the point man. We're the ones that people are looking at and saying, hey, okay, here's the problem. And like I said, the speed that things get done, it's unfortunate. It's years. It's not like, but once we accept it, it's our baby. And so I just didn't know if we had the board ever talked about, maybe saying, hey, let's wait and see if it actually works before we accept it. But I don't know, that was my thought process. I don't know if anybody else is, maybe you can enlighten me that we've crossed that bridge before I came here.
Sam, I think for myself, I'd have to agree with you. We've seen failures, but I'm going to run some questions past like Stephen. Do you feel the warranty period's long enough? Do you feel like they failed because they weren't engineered properly, or did they fail just because of unforeseen circumstances where you plan for a 100-year flood and you get a NOAA event instead? I mean, so I think you bring up a good point, but for us perhaps to let staff vent that a little bit and say, well, is it state statute that requires a 2-year warranty, or can the county say, well, we want a 3-year? What caused them to fail? Under-engineered, or the event itself, or just didn't get maintenance in time? So I think before we shift those gears, we'd really need to get some input on it. So, but I think it's a very good question. So
if you'd like me to give some input, just very briefly.
Sure.
On the Ashley Plantation, it's all the things you mentioned. There's some unforeseen soil conditions that were in there that have generated a little more runoff during storm events than I believe the engineer of record anticipated. The design probably, was then under-designed because of the runoff amounts were perhaps underestimated, and just some of the sheer slope out at Ashley Plantation. We don't have a lot of areas in the county with a lot of relief, but Ashley Plantation does have a lot of topographic relief that creates a velocity problem with the runoff, which causes erosion when it's trying to get into the stormwater systems, that it was overflowing the curbing and flowing through private property. So it's got a myriad of problems that we are working on. We have concentrated on the problem areas as they arise. And one of the things that is important to note is that we don't necessarily know, even after a 2-year period, where the problem areas might arise if homes haven't been constructed on the lots. So in areas that sit there vacant, they may work beautifully for however many years. Once homes get constructed, that's when we're going to, really put it to the test. In this particular subdivision, Hawks Landing, the stormwater pond has been constructed in the Phase 1. It has worked, fine for all of Phase 1. I don't believe there's an additional pond in this phase. I think it all interconnects. So I wouldn't anticipate any problems in this Phase 2. Doesn't mean they won't happen, but, we have a high degree of confidence. And I think that's what it takes going into these things, having a high degree of confidence. And the overall design, if you look county-wide, we really have very few of the newer subdivisions that have any notable problems. Certainly most of our problem areas are in older subdivisions that were done before we had the meaningful design standards that we have today. The Laurel Wood there, they do have an area where the drains going into the pond are at almost the same level as the overflow, and we are trying to keep that overflow and downstream of that overflow cleaned out so that the water can get out of the pond when it's overflowing. Most of the problems there in Laurelwood are from repeat storms where it rains hard, and then within a week later, before the ponds had a chance to recover, we get another heavy rain, and that's when we're getting some of that back up into the street. So those things do occur from time to time. It's not necessarily a true design error. It's just that the system gets overwhelmed. And so we do have a Road and Bridge, a high degree of confidence on this subdivision, as we do all the subdivisions that get recommended for paved road and drainage maintenance. Sometimes our hopes and expectations don't live up to what they should, but we also go in and try to correct these. And if it is something that falls as a warranty item during that 2-year period, we have the developer address it, and we've been very successful with that program.
And just for the commissioner's information, you noted one thing about stormwater overtopping roadways. Our 100-year design storm with the curb and gutter designs anticipates that the roadway will fill up to the top of the curb, and given the geometry of a roadway section, that's about an inch, inch and a half over the center line of the roadway, the entire length of the roadway. And then it becomes a matter of gutter spread, collecting that runoff before it overtops onto private property. And just as Stephen said, it was sequential rains, 3-day rains. These rains that we've been having, this inch that we get seemingly every day, eventually will fill up the retention. And those ponds are given 15 days recovery time frame to restore the volumes. And I understand the Laurelwoods is that situation with lack of recovery time. But certainly that's something we look at, the recovery periods, and those developments that you noted were reviewed for our Santa Rosa County standards and were deemed to have met those design standards. Now, do we need to strengthen our standards? That's certainly something we evaluate and review on a daily basis in engineering, and we would make the appropriate recommendations to the board if we deem those necessary.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I guess, again, that goes back on us 5 gentlemen, and I just want to point out, those subdivisions that we just mentioned, those are newer subdivisions. They're actually still currently building homes in both of those subdivisions, and we are experiencing problems, and now it's on the county. And I know for a fact, just because it was conveyed to me, even in Ashley Plantation, I know Commissioner Cole's aware of it, I'm aware of it. So that's my thought process is, why are we accepting new maintenance when we're still having problems with basically other new developments? And I don't want to say now we're the bad guys, but honestly, that's how it feels when you're sitting in this seat and you got the public calling you saying, hey, here's a problem, and it's the county maintenance. I don't know. It just seems like it would be something maybe I'm the only one thinking.
Sam, I think your comment hasn't fallen on deaf ears. I think if Stephen sees where him and Roger can do something to basically, Stephen don't want more work for his guys. He's got plenty now. So if he sees some flaw that he can take to Roger, that the two of them can bring to the board through the county administrator as a recommendation for changes to those agreements, I think they both heard loud and clear that they've got a board that's willing to look at it. So anything else? Ma'am? In the mic, please. Okay, there you go.
Deborah Bankus, 4112 Sheridan Drive, Pace. Thank you. Sam, I want to thank you for bringing this up. I wasn't going to talk on this issue today, but thank you, because you opened up the discussion. I appreciate that. Gentlemen, in my opinion, I live in Florida, in the Florida town area. Y'all know where I live. I seriously would like each and every one of you to take a look at whatever the county agreements are that we have with housing builders, with the construction going on. For instance, I heard the 2-year, you know what I mean, if it doesn't break in 2 years, you fix it. We've got to start changing that, because the growth that's occurring, we cannot keep the parameters that we have right now and sustain everything. The other thing, we've only got 3 engineers to my knowledge. Some of the guys sitting around here in the rooms have said, Deb, do you know how large this county is? I don't think these 3 guys can handle this type of growth. I think we need to get some more engineers in here. The other thing, I was at that meeting over in the south end, and it was $36,000, $38,000 for a study, and I remember Baskerville Donovan saying, when I think it was Rob asked the question, what can we do? The guy said, clean your ditches. I mean, come on, guys. Public Works can't handle this area. There's no way. There's no way. And we keep building this. These guys can't guarantee that there's not going to be watershed outfall coming to other east, south, west areas around this neighborhood. They can't guarantee that. You can't keep building like this. A couple of years ago when I got up here and talked with you, I went through the steps. I didn't know who to call Public Works. These guys they just dig ditches. They just dig ditches. These guys can't handle this.
Public Works does quite a bit more.
Well, I understand that. I know that, and I didn't mean that as a slam. Stephen knows that. They're not city planners, okay? And you are expanding and expanding and expanding. I had West Florida Water Management come and spend a day with me. Drove her out with me. I was extremely courteous of them. And I asked the guy, I said, what are your thoughts? He just looked at me and shook his head, and he looked down and he said, well, it hasn't been maintained, to say the least. So the existing is not being maintained. How can we keep growing and adding more and more of that, and we can't even keep up with what's already there? And we can't have, there's no reason to have oops with Ashley Plantation. There are no oopses. This isn't New Orleans. We don't sit in a bowl. This is good property. They shouldn't be building oopses. So, yeah, instead of a building moratorium or an impact fee, and that's the other thing, is You know, we got to do something. We're going to run this county into bankruptcy because we can't afford the maintenance on all of this construction. At some point, we're going to really get hurt. So that's all I've got to say. Sam, thank you.
Where are we at with item number 12? Jerry, go ahead.
Mr. Furman, you used the word unanticipated soil conditions, right? And so something had to be done. So was the engineer on record, did we punish him? Did we fine him? Or did the taxpayers pay for that unanticipated? I mean, how do things work like that?
Well, the engineer of record, to my knowledge, was not fined. I don't know that the county really has a mechanism for doing that.
So does that engineer still do work for us?
Well, he wasn't working for us. He was working for a developer.
Right.
And so he's not someone that does a lot of work in Santa Rosa County.
You understand the frustration. I'd like to point out that as we talk about these infrastructure, and I'm going to keep preaching about it until it's fixed. Mr. Furman over there receives less than 10% of the county budget and has since 2000 that I've been tracking it. Road and Bridges has received less than 10% of the total budget. And every week we have a conversation about a flooding issue, a road issue, a curb and gutter, or a problem with infrastructure. And I'm going to say it again, and I will continue to say it again until there's 5 people in front of me that understand the importance of it. You have to pay for infrastructure, and 10% of the total budget going to infrastructure leads to failure every single time. Roger, you know, I'm a fan of yours. You've done a lot of great work, but you just said something a minute ago that just really, a developer is telling us that they won't make money in our county selling houses unless we take the roads in advance. I'll tell you what my personal opinion of that is. Go build a house some other place. Commissioner Parker, I agree with you. 2 years is not enough to immediately take these roads. Holly by the Sea, 25 years ago, what did we do? We immediately accepted all that, and now we're paying the price. Last figure I saw was $89 million to fix Holly by the Sea because we accepted what it was, because we allowed pressure to be rained upon us by those that make money off putting developments in our county. All right, it's time for us to start resisting that pressure from those that are making money off of our county. If they don't want to be partners with us, if they don't want to understand that we want 3 years or we're not going to accept it for the first full year, go some other place. We've got 160,000 people that live in this county now. Why do we live here? I hear all 5 of you say it all the time. It's the quality of life in Santa Rosa County. And meeting after meeting, I come up here with people down on their knees begging you to stop the flooding, begging you to fix the road. We're taking off again on another building spree. Thank goodness 700 houses on Woodbine is, well, I won't say that it won't happen. I know it's been slightly delayed. We know how the game has worked. But this Board of County Commissioners is going to have to stand up and think about the long-term effects. Look, I'm not going to stand here and howl about somebody building a house. But we have to, as a county, think about the long-term effects. I don't want this to be a SCAMU county where people drowned when it rains over there. We've done well. Roger Blaylock instituted a 100-year stormwater many years ago, and I've applauded him often for that. But we are allowing pressure over and over and over. It infuriates me that a developer believes he can tell the county in which he's building a house that he won't build any houses unless we automatically accept his roads. And we've seen failure after failure, Saddle Club Estates, Holly by the Sea, Ashley Plantation, over and over and over. And guess what, guys? Every time the answer is reach in the taxpayer's pocket to fix that problem. All right, this attitude of nobody's done anything wrong, or are they? It was a slight miscalculation. I'm tired of that. It's either a miscalculation or it's not a miscalculation. If somebody does something incorrectly, as an engineering firm, they should never be allowed to work in Santa Rosa County again. I know home builders that aren't allowed to build in Santa Rosa County because Santa Rosa County has pulled their licenses forever. The same thing needs to occur here. And gentlemen, I want to encourage you to start standing up and understanding that this subdivision attached to that subdivision causes problems with subdivision A. And before we take off on these 1,500 to 2,500 house building spree that we're well on our way to do, we need to make sure we get it right. We need to think about the people that are living around those subdivisions. We need to think about what is right for the taxpayers and understand that this taxpayer, and I think a lot of other taxpayers, are tired of cleaning up messes. We got a $80 million mess at Holly by the Sea. Saddle Club, what did we spend down there? $1 million. We had to buy 5 houses over that area, $200 and something thousand a piece, spent $1.3 million. All the additional engineering that we're having to do in-house, we shouldn't be doing that. That's not the taxpayer's responsibility. If someone wants to open up a business in Santa Rosa County, it's their responsibility to handle everything they need. It's not the taxpayer's responsibility. That's all I'm asking. Please think about this as we take off on this new growth spurt that we are in. Let's not make the same mistakes that we've made in the past. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none.
Just one question. I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but just for Roy, is there any, I guess it goes back to the original question, is there any legal reason that we have to make that acceptance right now, or is it just based upon whenever they request it?
I think that, I don't think there's anything that would mandate that we have the acceptance at the, other than the fact that they've built it in accordance with our land development regulations and have complied in all fashions with our regulations as they exist. I think we'd have to change our regulations to do it. I think Mr. Furman's or Mr. Blaylock's statement in regard to a lending institution, including any Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac insured loans being required to be on a county-maintained roadway is a significant factor in the development of housing. So I'm not going to say that a private subdivision would not be possible. Obviously, we do have regulations in regard to that. But they have built in order for us to accept the maintenance, they have complied in all respects with our existing land development regulations.
So it's in our LDC as far as that 2-year warranty. That would be something, if we wanted to adjust that would have to go through that process.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that is not mandated by state statute. That's our regulation.
Okay.
I can confess, I mean, a lot of the things you mentioned were done years and years ago before Roger implemented that, probably before any of us were even on this board. But since my tenure on this board, I've actually gone out with people from engineering departments in answer to a developer's request and complaint, basically, that your engineering department's being too hard on me. And seeing roads, not particular drainage, but roads that had, you know, enough asphalt on it almost blow it away, and Roger's group turned them down. Said, no, you have to have X number of inches of asphalt before we're going to accept that. So I know our engineering department's doing their job in making sure to the best they can that everything conforms to the engineering standards. So All right, item number 12, then I'm going to pass without objection. Hearing none, it passes.
Sir, if I could just say a couple things. One, I think there needs to be some clarification of the facts. We currently have 4 engineers, and our 5th will start in 2 weeks. With this budget cycle, we added an engineering position, and Roger's already offered, and an individual has accepted that position. I know Mr. Cooey is obviously looking at the road and bridge budget being less than 10%, but if you look at transportation and physical environment, which one could say is infrastructure, we're spending about $47 million in the next budget year on that physical infrastructure. So to say less than 10% is being spent, I don't think is an accurate assessment of our current budget environment. The board approved last year 4 additional positions for road and bridge and $2 million in capital equipment last year. Those positions went unfilled the majority of this year because of the salaries. The board adjusted salaries this year across the county employees to the tune of $2.2 million. If those positions are now filled in road and bridge and the additional $2.2 million in capital equipment that are planned in this budget year, that should put Public Works and Road and Bridge in a pretty good position to address some of these concerns. There's a maintenance report that is sent to you all, I think, bi-weekly from Stephen on the miles and miles of ditch that are cleaned throughout the county, primarily in Holly by the Sea, where that focus has been for the last year. So I think that I felt obligated to clarify a couple points and questions that have been raised.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Not counting this year, which are not even in that budget, it's been less than 10% all the way back to 2000. So you may be spending a little more this year, and I'll grant you that. I haven't looked at every line item of it, but historically, long before you got here, from 2000 forward, less than 10%. It's a fact.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on now to Public Service Committee. Commissioner Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for trying, Mr. Shebler. Yes, for those that have waited for this, thank you. Animal Services update, Brad, and I see Dale, our 2014 Public Services Employee of the Year, is here as well. Take it away, sir.
Just let me thank Commissioner Parker for highlighting our Turnaround, Don't Drown campaign to keep people safe out there. But thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted to start, first of all, with highlighting the staff at Animal Services. You know, they're kind of tucked away there at the animal shelter or out answering the complaints out in the field, and they're rarely highlighted for all the tough jobs that they do. And so I want to give them a shout out and kudos for all their hard work over the years, kind of tucked away back there. Really, Santa Rosa County has a pet ownership problem and a overpopulation of pet problem, and that is evident by the intake that we experience. So I'll give you some numbers. So for last week, we took in 130 animals, 43 dogs, 16 puppies, 51 cats, and 20 kittens. The week before that, we took in 121 animals, 38 dogs, 2 puppies, 66 cats, and 15 kittens. And that doesn't count the rabbits, possums, and raccoons. So in 2 weeks, we took in 251 animals. This seems like a never-ending cycle that we must break. So our capacity, we have 81 dog kennels and 62 cat kennels. So depending on if we're putting litters of kittens with their mom or however, you know, we are limited to about, you know, 140 to 240, depending on if we double up, depending on, you know, the size of the dogs and how they get along and all that. So you can see that in 2 weeks, we took well beyond the capacity of our shelter, and that's not counting the 142 that were already in the shelter at the start of those 2 weeks. So We obviously have a pet ownership problem. I think the real answer, the real solution is the need to get a low-cost spay and neuter program up and running. And, you know, obviously, I want to sound like Bob Barker, you know, we got to spay and neuter our pets to control the pet population, and that's probably the real answer here. I'll tell you a few things that we have going on. We have worked with after the Hope for Santa Rosa come and talk with you folks, and the University of Florida Go Gators assessment team will be conducting an assessment of our shelter operations. That are doing that.
Go Knowles.
October 30th through November the 2nd. Of course, we look forward to this endeavor, and we'll bring back, you know, their findings to the board for an update from that. We placed an RFP for veterinarian services that will be open this Thursday. We're excited to get a part-time vet on staff. They can help with vaccinations, the spay and neuter, medical evaluation of the animals that we bring into the shelter, and then obviously they can provide some training opportunities for our staff. We also held a partnership meeting with animal rescues and advocacy groups on September 6th at the EOC. We had a very good turnout, a very good meeting, and repeatedly the breed discrimination issue was thrown up. And so we are updating our policy, not listing specific breeds, but basing our adoption policy on decisions based on the temperament of the animal versus the breed of the animal. To help out with that rescue coordination, we've designated Tara there at Animal Services, one of our kennel Tech 2s that has been engaging over the years with all of our rescues and working the social media side. She's going to be our rescue coordinator along with her other duties, and she'll be tasked with getting the pets out of the shelter to the different rescues and then helping spread the word. We're obviously going to promote public outreach and education. We are really close to rolling out our amended volunteer and foster program, and not only we hope this will help with the day-to-day operations of the animal shelter, but also give us some shelter relief to get some of these animals into a foster environment while they wait on their forever home to be adopted. So kind of the plan going forward is to take and let me go back. So we don't want to implement a lot of this stuff because we have the shelter assessment coming, we have a vet coming on staff, and obviously we want to take the advice of the vet and how we can best manage the shelter. So going forward, we'll take the vet recommendations, the staff recommendations, our partners' recommendations, the UF assessment recommendations. We'll formulate a long-term strategy to educate pet owners and help reduce the pet population, which then will in turn help us with our ultimate goal, which is to reduce the number of euthanasias that occur at the shelter. But one thing that I want to get across to everybody is what we don't want to do is implement policies that shifts this burden to others. And I've seen that as I've reached out to some of the other animal shelters and dealing with some of our neighbors, such as, you know, decreasing our intake or not allowing people to drop their dogs or cats off. Our staff feels like that then there's a chance for animal cruelty to start up in our county, the worse that it is. So we're not going to just implement something to reduce our numbers and not come in here and sing kumbaya and tell y'all we've reduced our euthanasia numbers, because we really just hid the numbers and pushed them off to other places. So that's one thing we're not going to do. We're going to take a steady approach to this to reduce our euthanasia numbers. So I will tell you that some other future considerations that will come up. We have been looking at the ordinance. It definitely needs a review and an updating. And most of the agencies around us, and actually throughout the state of Florida, they do a pet licensing, and that will be as we do a little more research and talk with the assessment team, that'll be something I'll be bringing back to you, because not only do we see the overpopulation problem, we have a problem that a lot of the animals are not vaccinated properly, and obviously that can spread rabies and other diseases. So that pet licensing will be a component that we could promote the vaccination of animals, but also we could promote maybe a lower fee for those pets who are spayed and neutered, and then that would help our population problem or overpopulation problem. So just a quick overview, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions from members of the board? quite a bit of progress going on, and I know you have, as you mentioned, a couple of 2 or 3 ongoing studies, so you don't want to make wholesale changes until you can incorporate that into your future plan. I just had a question after digesting or having an opportunity to digest those numbers that we saw at the previous meeting about how Santa Rosa County ranks statewide against the other 67 counties. Do you know if, because it's total number of animals, and we have a very high amount of cats when you compare it to other animals as far as the euthanasia rates go. It's based off of primarily total animals. Do other counties, how do we compare with other counties? Is that typical that you would have a much higher cat
The cat-dog ratio, I do not know. I know Brandy and her group with Hope for Santa Rosa did that study, so I'd have to research it a little further for me to give you that kind of input. Just talking with others, obviously, we ran a thing on our social media here a while back and talking about the number of cats and let's say just 6 kittens, and then 8 months from now there's 6 times 6 kittens, and then 6 times 6 times 6 kittens. So in a year and a half, you can have a whole lot of kittens out there. So a lot of people are doing. A lot of people have the low-cost spay and neuter, which is obviously the biggest thing. When you're talking about people having to spend $100 to $120 to get their animal fixed, they're probably not going to do that. So if we can get that low-cost spay and neuter as an option for our citizens, and we do have a program that helps out with some, but just not the massive amount that we need, and we need to do public education and outreach to get that across to the pet owners.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Brad, thank you for your work on this, and Dale and Brandy, thank you for bringing this to my attention a few weeks ago, and everybody taking hold of this, taking ownership of this, and moving it forward. So, thank you.
Is there any action for the board? No? When will you follow up again? Just for those listening might want to know.
We'll get, I believe there's a report out at the end of that week, and then I'm assuming that they'll do a follow-up written report to us after that, and when I get that back, so I'm thinking the November meeting, depending on how the timing falls out with us only having one that month, it may be the 1st of December.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. So no action on that item, Mr. Chairman. We move to item number 2, which is Section 5311 Public Transportation Grant Award. Oh, I apologize.
It's okay.
Snuck up on me like a shapeshifter.
Stealthy like a cat.
Name and address for the record, please.
Brandy Winkleman, 5764 Charlene Drive, Milton. You had asked about the cats. So
Yes.
I have been gathering data for 8 years now. So other counties, most counties across the state of Florida that have better percentages, it's because they've implemented a trap, neuter, and return program. So that's one thing that we're pushing for countywide. We're working with Gulf Breeze actually right now I've been working with the police chief and the city manager over there because they have a high density problem of feral cats. Our county, it's estimated to have around 30,000 feral cats. And if you got the math that Brad just put forth to you, that will increase exponentially each year because we're not doing anything about it. The trap and euthanize apparently isn't working, and it is making our numbers worse. So if you look at other numbers for other counties, the numbers for cats aren't necessarily as high, and the way that we gathered our statistics was we took overall intake versus the overall euthanasia, and we found the percentage that way. So our 93% kill rate for cats really is pushing us overboard, and we can definitely lower that if we were fixing them and releasing them to other areas, or to the areas as long as the private owners allowed it, as most people want. I didn't know, did I answer your question about the cats?
Yes, yeah, I think ultimately that we could reduce our numbers significantly if we are able to help solve that problem that we have with cats, if it's disproportionately more than the other.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say thank you for helping to promote responsible pet ownership, and I think your advocacy has made a significant impact, your advocacy and others, and shining a light on this, and that an improvement was needed, and I think everybody's leaning in now.
Good. Well, I mean, we take 30 to 60 animals every 2 weeks. Tonight, we're taking 35 animals. I load up at 4 a.m. in the morning to take them to Operation Spay Bay in Panama City. So that's about a 2-hour drive over there. So we would love help getting a low-cost spay neuter clinic opened up here. Of course, we're a small nonprofit. We've only been actually in business for a year now, September.
It's a lot of success for 1 year.
Well, it just kind of came out like that. But like I said, I've been gathering stats for a really long time and really working on the animal issues. I agree with Brad. It's definitely lessening intake is going to be the main thing that we're working on right now. Because limiting intake isn't going to help, lessening intake will. So if you ever have any ideas of how we can get a low-cost clinic opened up sooner, we're more than happy to help run it or help get it going. I work in the clinic all day whenever I drive over there. So tomorrow I'll be in Panama City I get there at 7 a.m. and I leave there at 3 in the afternoon. And then I come back and bring them all back. So I'm all ears for all ideas.
Thank you so much for what you do. And there's going to be a significant amount of activity between now and the end of the year, it sounds like. Now moving on to item number 2. Sean Ward is here, still doing duty as the transportation planner. And go to Dan on this item, or?
Only I think for 2 more weeks. We also Sean recently hired a transportation planner that will start start today. Not here? This is the annual grant for
this meeting. They may never come back.
Annual grant for public transportation that we do, and Sean will answer any specific questions you have about any of the backup.
This helped fill in some of those gaps with.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is an annual
Investigator.
award for Section 5311. We make a request every year to the state of Florida and FDOT and the Transportation Disadvantaged Commission to award this funding to us. The board approved the grant application in December, and it was awarded. It's just an annual review and just signature to accept the cost of the funding. And this funding does come from the TD Commission, and we use FDOT federal funding for half of it and TD Commission funding for the other half. So there's no financial obligation to Santa Rosa County on that.
Okay, so the action item would be to authorize acceptance of the grant award for Thursday. I would ask that we would move that to Thursday's consent agenda, Mr. Chairman, without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
Thank you, Sean. Number 3, building permit fee resolution. Dan?
Yes, sir. This was discussed in our budget workshops and our public budget hearings, and also discussed last month in a regular meeting. Ron is here to answer any specific questions. These are the minor incremental increases in some of the permit fees across all of our permits that will allow the building department to hire those additional inspection folks as well as permit technicians. They'll be adding 5 folks next year.
I know this is pretty much the action item. The discussion has been made, debate has been made on this, but I just think this is an opportunity that as we continue to innovate and you have changes in this department or in any department, that numbers can go up, and this is actually a possibility that numbers can actually go down as well. And we might want to look at that type of evaluation of the numbers across the spectrum for things like, I don't know, maybe millage rates, as well as things like this, to where you could have a fluctuation as you allocate resources differently from year to year. And so I noticed that some of these were not significant changes. They weren't big changes, but as technology and innovation change what you do, we may find that we can reduce some and keep tweaking the numbers as we move along. If there's no questions or comments from the board, I see that your light is on, Mr. Chairman. We need to approve the resolution, so I'd move the approval of the resolution with the fee structure as stated in the backup to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
Do we have a comment from the public?
What's the residential building fee permit today compared to last year?
Oh, was it $30 for what's the variance on that? 30 or 60 for the permit fee? Jerry, please feel free to hum the theme to Jeopardy while I look up that data for you, sir. Maybe run us. Yes?
Well, he has me because I don't remember what the difference. We are increasing the base fee, and we ran numbers on a 2,500 square foot house, and the difference, if my recollection is correct, it's around $80 to $90 if you compare a 2,500 square foot house to today's fees, and then what the fees would increase to is around that.
I apologize. I was like at electrical permits and things like that for single-family detached building permits.
If you calculate all the permits, the building, the electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and gas, it's around a $90 increase overall.
90?
Yes, sir.
What's the actual cost of a building permit?
The total cost, it just varies by the square footage of the building.
2,400, I'll use your example.
$10.25 per 100 square feet.
So $240 plus a little bit.
Thank you.
And the additional revenue, is it like $250,000 or something?
About 265, yes, sir.
So that'd be the second adjustment in 4 years. Okay,
Thank you.
Finish off that action, recommend moving that to the Thursday consent agenda, Mr. Chairman, without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
That concludes the report.
Thank you. Thank you. We've already taken care of Public Works Committee. Thank you, Commissioner Salter. Budget and Finance, Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is discussion of award for bridge steel beams for use in bridge construction to Sable Steel as the lowest priced qualified bidder meeting specifications. You have the backup in your agenda. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
Item 2, discussion of budget amendment 2018-211 in the amount of $30,785 to transfer the unspent balance of the supplement grant award back to the EFF Economic Development Reserves for the I-10 Industrial Park project. We'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda if there are no questions. Without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
Item 3, discussion of budget amendment 2018-212 in the amount of $1,011,261 to transfer funds from the future capital outlay account in the LOST fund to the sheriff's line item in the LOST fund to cover previous and current approved expenditures in that fund. If there are no questions on this, I'll move it to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Seeing none, it passes.
Item 4, discussion of approval of budget amendment 2018-213 in the amount of $35,000 for maintenance, repairs, and restoration of the A4C Skyhawk aircraft display located at the I-10 westbound rest area in Santa Rosa County. Due to earlier action of the board today, this funding is not going to come from the general fund. It will come out of the repair and maintenance budget of the tourist development tax. There are sufficient funds in that account to cover the expense. Is it good there? Okay, any questions? If not, I'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Seeing none, it passes.
Item 5, discussion of budget amendment 2018-214 in the amount of $37,920 to reconcile the FY 2018 DRG grant final amounts and recognizes new FY 2019 award in the amount of $29,169 for the period July 1, 2018 through the grant end of June 30, 2019. Also recognizes total carry forward in the amount of $8,751 from REPI reimbursement reserves for the 2019 approved match. This 18-19 grant award and match was approved by the BOCC on August 9th, 2018. I'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Seeing none, it passes.
And item 6 is the check register. I will review that and have it on your desk, Mr. Chairman. So I'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
And Mr. Chairman, I will not be here on Thursday. I will be at the Florida Consortium meeting dealing with restore funds.
All right, then you got a good excuse. All right, that takes care of today's agenda. Anything else from staff or any county commissioners care to speak? Commissioner Parker?
I'll be at the same venue that Commissioner Lynchard will, so I will not be here for Thursday's meeting.
All right, we can spend all kind of rec funds out of District 5 and District 1, so.
Put them all in District 3.
There you go. All right, so noted. This time I'll ask if there's anybody from the public. I'll open the floor to public forum.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Catch me up on a couple of things. The fire fees. Did we go full amount or did we back off a little bit? We had discussed that earlier.
We backed way off of what the 100% level of funding was. Where did we end up, Dan?
For the 9 northern fire districts, it was 72.5%, and for Navarre Beach, it was 83.
83, we still going with the 1.5 on a house exceeding 2,200 square feet? 1.5, one of the things that was in the presentation, if the house was over 2,200 square feet, you had to pay 1.5 times the assessment.
There are two tiers. Is
There are
2,400 square feet?
There are 2 tiers for the 9 northern districts. There are 2 tiers. It's 2,500 square feet, and it's not quite, it's about 1.5, 103 and 155 were the rates.
Okay. Commissioner Cole, this, I don't have a whole lot of information about this, but I think it's something that needs to be discussed at a public meeting. There was, what I was told was there was a donation by the railroad company to the East Milton Fire Department of some, do you know anything about that? Of $11,000?
Not aware of any donation from the railroad. You know what it would have been for, or just?
Well, it was just a donation to the railroad. The concern was that.
From the railroad?
Yes. Some of that money went directly to some individuals at that fire department.
Well, certainly have Mr. Baker still sitting here. Brad, can you run that down for us or know anything about it?
Yeah, if he could enlighten what happened there, what occurred. Thank you.
Yes, it was back in the, I can't remember the year of the derailment out in East Milton, but they provided some standby coverage for CSX, and they were paid. From what I understand, they did pay some of their firemen who were not already paid out of that. We, when it was brought to our attention, we turned it over to the state attorney. Am I right on that one, Mr. Spencer? I believe we turned it over to the state attorney. He did an investigation, and the last I had heard from that, there was going to be no charges filed, and they were working some internal stuff out with the fire department.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. And I can appreciate that. Here's my concern. It's not the first time we've had some financial issues at places that represent Santa Rosa County. My concern in this one is that you had people working there who felt it was okay to take the money and put it directly in their pocket. In my mind, at the time of the derailment, whatever the railroad decided to do, that money deposited in the account would have immediately become taxpayer money. Now, should the Board of County Commissioners decide to hand out a bonus to a firefighter, I'm all about that, as long as it's done right here and everybody gets to see the process. To be quite honest with you, I really don't care what the state attorney has to say about it. I think this is an ethical and moral decision that we here at the county level should take care of. Now, what I have heard is that the next stipend that fire department gets is going to be $11,000 less. That doesn't wash with me. Okay, to be quite honest with you, if Don Spencer had some money left over at the end of the year and he decided to sling out bonuses to everybody, would that be right? I don't think so. It should be board approved. Now, my point is, $3 million a year going to fire service. We just went up 72% on additional money going into fire services. And we still have things like this happening, and it falls under oversight. It's not the first time. I'd like to be able to say it would be the last time, but we've had some issues in some of our parks. We've had some issues at some of our fire departments. The fact that the state attorney's office doesn't think any charges are going to be filed, I don't care. I think they should. That money was handled wrong, and I think restitution should be made. And I'll take it a step further. If money went, if it went like how I've been told it went, then did the IRS get their cut? Okay, was there a W-2? You know, we can't just hand out bonuses willy-nilly and not have a paper trail on it. I didn't want to have to stand here and say this today, but it didn't look like it was going to get resolved, so it's out in the open now. And all I'm asking is that we do the right thing here. We can't have organizations doing things like that. It's ultimately taxpayer money, and I would appreciate a little stronger oversight on that. Commissioner Lynchard, you mentioned a word very near and dear to me earlier, and that was renourishment. And I'm going to tell you right now, with what's going on in the state of Florida with the beach access in many counties, I'll just tell you ahead of time, this taxpayer is not going to participate in beach renourishment until full access is restored. I know you guys didn't have anything to do with that. It was a state level thing, and I'm not fussing you guys about it. But there's no appetite for helping a beach that the average citizen can't walk on anymore. And I would be very cautious about that. One final thing, and we just finished our taxes this year. Any consideration given to a homeowner getting a reduction in his impact fee or his ad valorem taxes this year? How much did we go down? That's state.
There's an additional exemption that is on the ballot in November for an additional.
There is. I'm talking about locally on our millage rate. Did we reduce the millage rate?
Our millage rate stayed the same, 6.095.
Right, and I appreciate. We do seem to be getting a lot of things done, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that everybody has done well in this giant budget that we have this year, except for the homeowners. I want to remind you that the homeowners in Santa Rosa County for many years has funded everything that went on in this county and until the last few years. We're the first ones that you come to for problems with roads and holding ponds and all of these things, but we're also the last ones you ever seem to show any consideration for on our ad valorem taxes. You increase the gas tax by 6%. You have local option sales tax now. Property values are going up, so in general, there's more tax revenue coming in. There's a lot of sources of revenue coming in. And I just stand before you today as a property tax payer for many years. Throw us a bone. Give us a little bit off of our tax. I don't think it's too much to ask. I saw a lively discussion on Facebook the other day that I explained to some folks. Well, why do they have meetings about? Because they say the millage rate stays the same. Well, we all know that if you collect more in the current year than you did the previous year, if you don't reduce the millage rate, it's a tax increase. You guys have been blessed in a county that's had pretty steady growth in it, like a few years of increased money coming in for many years on ad valorem. And I stand before you today asking the county to show a little love, to throw a bone to the many homeowners that in a time when ad valorem was the only thing, the only source of revenue and a very small gas tax, we were funding everything. So just have a little consideration. Thank you.
Jerry, just want to remind you that this year we'll collect almost as much in ad valorem taxes as we did in 2007. We have been going up in the last 3 or 4 years, but we went from $58.5 million in ad valorem tax collections in 2007 down to about $42 or $43 million. That's a 25% reduction in our ad valorem taxes, and we held the millage steady. So our rollback rate was higher than 6.0953, but we kept it at 6.0953 throughout the Great Recession. We never once increased it. You heard earlier that we were unable to fill positions in public works because our salary range is not high enough. The money that we realize from the additional gas tax and from the local option sales tax cannot be used to pay salaries of the employees at Public Works. It's for capital. It's not for operating expenses. Those operating expenses go up every year. Inflation takes place every year. We went again from 58 million down to 42, 43 million, cut 25% of the county's workforce during that time. So I think we've done a good job over the last decade of keeping our expenses in line, being good stewards of the tax dollars, holding that millage rate steady through both the downturn and now the upswing. We don't know what next year is going to bring. It looks like it's probably going to bring about $4 million less in ad valorem tax collections than we're going to see this year because of the additional homestead exemption. So that's about a $4 million shortfall that we'll have to figure out how to make up.
And as always, I do appreciate your comments. This is the largest budget Santa Rosa County's ever had. And the homeowners did not get any break whatsoever. That's why I just want to put the placeholder here. I want you to show a little love and just wring your hands a little bit and feel bad about not giving me a break. At least do that.
I feel bad about it.
Okay. All right.
Let me just hang on just a second. If our great state legislators would quit patting themselves on the back by giving you that love and showing you that love, maybe we could afford to give you some love. So that's where I got to go with it. So.
Yeah, I want to point that out too, is your state legislators and delegation have preempted us being able to have home rule. They have taken that away. I mean, you could say you're getting a $4 million tax break this year for the homeowners, but let me just say this. I think I'm in the top 5% of amount of property taxes paid of individuals in this county. I think Commissioner Lynchard's there as well for having multiple pieces of property. I don't feel that I'm gypped by saying that, because what I do have is reduced crime rates. We have more deputies on the street. We have higher deputy morale. We have low property homeowners insurance compared to what it could be if we didn't have such good ratings. I mean, we have services, we have parks that are getting built. Thank God a lot of that is through the local option sales tax. But I'll just share with you, in my short tenure of 2 years on this board, what I have hear repeatedly, I don't know that there's been a week gone by that I've ever not heard. It's the drum that you beat earlier on infrastructure. I hear about traffic. I hear about stormwater. We've had times where you hear about fire or law enforcement. We have times where we hear about recreation. And I hear about that a lot because I'm out at parks and ball fields, like Commissioner Salter said. I'm at 4 and 5 days a week with 2 young children. And what I hear repeatedly from those folks is they want the county to provide more infrastructure. They want the county to do more. I don't hear, I'm not saying that sentiment's there. Maybe it's the silent majority. I'm just sharing with you what I hear is they want this county to provide them with more and not less. So, I'd put that as a taxpayer. I don't feel that we're being slighted because our taxes aren't being reduced. I feel that the citizens that are speaking out in volumes to me, and I know many of these men, when they receive these bulk emails, are that they're asking for more from the county. So I just say that. I want you to think it's kind of like my pastor says, when you pay your tithe and offering, God doesn't always bless you with a bigger paycheck. Maybe your tires last longer or something doesn't break down. And so I just point that out. I mean, you look at the quality service that you're getting from law enforcement, the quality service you're getting from fire, the quality parks that you can carry kids to, roads, thank God. I mean, most of our roads in this county are paved. We can drive an hour and a half to the east of us in the Panhandle, and you've got counties that, they're not worried about 4-lane, and they're just wishing they could get a few paved roads. So I just want to point that out. And so, I'll go on public record and say I'm not going to apologize. I actually wish. And part of that, too, with the largest budget ever, was from our last meeting, I believe, our county administrator stated. Part of that is sort of he did it in a different way. It was a carry forward from the expenditures that were approved from last year's budget that weren't spent. And so I think that's where you're seeing a big realization. So I think if it would have been done that way last year, you wouldn't see that. But I'm just sharing with you, that's what I'm hearing from constituents. And I wouldn't go out on a limb and say it if it wasn't voluminous, that people are actually wanting more from what I hear.
And I appreciate your comments. And since 1991, people sitting in these chairs come at me with the same thing. They say, well, everybody wants more. But once again, the homeowners have paid the majority of the freight for years and years and years, and you should show a little love. It doesn't have to be giant. All 5 of you are Republicans. Smaller government, lower taxes. The homeowner never gets a consideration in this. And what we've seen already is I'm going to pay a higher building fee permit. I'm going to pay a higher tax. I'm paying higher gas taxes. I'm paying a higher local option sales tax. The one place, and I've always been a believer of user fees. I'm all about user fees. Absolutely. If I had it my way, there wouldn't be any property taxes in the whole United States of America, because I never truly own my property. If I go 3 years without paying my taxes, somebody else gets it. But I just want to have a placeholder here, build a little conscience here to think about the taxpayers that's funded most of this for many, many years. They'd like just a little break. If it's symbolic, give a little break. That's all I'm asking. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr.
Thank you,
Cooley.
Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes, sir.
address one of the issues that Jerry was talking about on the Baghdad Volunteer Fire Department? When not Baghdad, but East Milton, when CSX paid them that money, we found that through our audit. It's how we discovered that amount of money. And this is going on 2 years back. I'm trying to remember what we did on that. They couldn't afford to pay all that money back without laying people off. So, and you can come to my office and we look at what took place, but from the best of my recollection, we let them pay that over a couple of years. The county's going to get that money back. Once we found that in the audit, they could not keep that money, but they couldn't pay it all back at one time. So we worked out where they could pay us back over a couple of years with the money that was paid to them.
That's fine. Did individuals get money, or did the fire department get money?
To the best of my recollection, they paid it to firefighters.
Right. And that's the defining line for me. And I appreciate you finding it. You found a lot of things, and I appreciate that. The defining line for me is, I understand if a fire department or any entity may be spending in a way that wasn't proper, but we had individuals that took that money. There was not a W-2. There was not a tracking mechanism in place. And I think it, honestly, fairly, it needs to be relooked, and this needs to be cleaned up, and a policy needs to be stated that can't happen again. It's not right for an elected board to make decisions like that. Like I said in the beginning, if you, the county commissioners, want to give bonuses to fire to any organization in this county, I'm fine with that if it's justified and there's a need for it. But it needs to be done in the sunshine of the day, not our clerk of courts finding it 2 years after the fact. You see, that's what I'm talking about, is folks that have an attitude that think that that's okay. It wasn't okay. It wasn't okay that it was handled that way. It's not the fire department that owes Santa Rosa County. The fact that they're going to get $11,000 less for use at the firehouse is not the problem here. The problem is the individuals that took the money. They should be paying the money back. It's not the firehouse here. The citizens that are covered by that fire department should not suffer an $11,000 deficit in their firefighting capabilities because individuals in that department made bad decisions. I think y'all need to look at it again. It needs to be looked at real hard, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks for your time.
Jerry, and I agree. I find it hard to understand why a company as big as CSX wanted to handle that in a different way and required 1040As and W-2 forms, and I would think in the future those checks would come directly to Santa Rosa County and then be distributed appropriately.
Well, I think the railroad company ought to be making an annual distribution for our fire departments, because when they have a it's bad. It takes everything we have. Maybe we ought to have a policy where they make an extra donation every year, but that was handled wrong. And I'm not satisfied with where it's at right now. That's what I'm saying. And I think you know me well enough to know I'll use my friend Alan's statement. When I bite a pork chop, I'm gonna drag it out of the road. So let's clean it up and let's make this right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, who's next?
Just for the record, has that been brought to us before today?
No.
Okay. As you come up, I just wanted to state, this hasn't been brought to our board before you brought it up.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kristen Carter. I'm the founder and president of Second Chance Colony Cat Rescue. Most of what I had to say today was covered already. So you have packets that I prepared with basically a solution to our feral cat problem, or at least a possible solution. It's under my impression that you are not big fans of TNR due to the releasing portion of the project. A lot of people in the county, there's some that are against it and there's some that are for it. Well, the project that I'm bringing to you today is actually a feral cat sanctuary. Now, the packet that I've prepared has everything that I could possibly think of for price-wise, but I'm kind of hoping that the property that you were just speaking of earlier that this county sits on, that's not that we can't develop, may be used for this particular project. And basically what this would do is it would turn Santa Rosa County shelter into a no-kill cat shelter as soon as the doors open. Last year alone, they were forced to euthanize 1,300 cats and that were viable, and this was due to space, behavioral issues, or being deemed feral. Out of those 1,300, you could basically move them to the sanctuary and have a team of people who can decide, spend more time with that animal and decide if there's a possibility of adoption or if it needs to stay on the sanctuary. Most of your feral cats that come in are young, and there is a socialization project that I have done multiple times that works. But the problem is the county doesn't have the time to implement these procedures. Now, by doing this, in the packet it's a 40-acre possibility, and I based those numbers off of how many cats were euthanized in total last year, which was 2,000. Only 1,300 of those would have actually been viable to continue to work with. The largest cat sanctuary in the world right now is the Cat House on the Kings in California. They opened in 1992 and currently house 700 cats on 12 acres. I spoke with her on the phone about this project, and she gave me her full support in helping me to develop a sanctuary that works. Now, she's not offering, financial support because she is a 501, but she was willing to lend me as much information as she possibly could to make this work. And by implementing this, you would put Santa Rosa County as holding the largest cat sanctuary in the world. So it would put Milton in national news. And you would essentially be taking your TNR problem and your high euthanasia rates and diminishing both of them at the same time.
Okay. Well, I met with you before the meeting today, and I think you've got a good idea, but we need to work that through staff, and you certainly need to implement, your 501c3, get more private funding, because if I went to Jerry Cooey and said, I want to give you $500,000 to open a cat sanctuary, I think you've already seen Mr. Cooey in action. I think he would probably have an objection or two to make to that. So,
right.
Like I say, develop your idea, continue working on it, work with our staff, but certainly I, as a board member, couldn't approve, giving you 40 acres or giving a 501c3 $500,000 on the premise that has to be developed. So
I'm actually not asking for either one of those things today.
The numbers we went over was like 250,000 to $500,000 plus the acreage.
Right.
So,
what I based that off of was numbers, but I'm not asking for that.
I know, but that's the long and the short of it type thing. I mean, you got, like I say, you got a good idea, which is the short of it. The long of it's, you're not far enough down the road to say, commissioners, I'm coming to you with a piece of property, with a program that's already developed, and private funding of $150,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys help me with this? And then after you've vetted that with staff that says, hey, she's got a good thing going here, it is helping, it is making an impression, then possibly we'd have something more to work with. So you've got it started right, is what I'm saying. But, you're, to me, and I'm only one of 5, you're still quite a length away from, getting board to be on your side with this thing. And the other thing I'd suggest is work with a Hope for Santa Rosa and, combine your efforts, because a lot of times we're concerned and we're beat over the head by citizens that says, well, we have, 2 different things going on here that are doing the same thing. So why don't we combine them? And that's going to be, the other board members may have other recommendations, but that's the best recommendation I can make after sitting down with you and hearing your proposal and then giving you the time today to present it to the board. So.
Right, I understand, and I appreciate your time and effort. I was basically just looking for a task force to actually do exactly what you were saying. The only reason I gave you a basic, pricing form was just to show you, where it possibly could be, but it was also middle range. It wasn't the cheapest, so.
But and what today could do is expose, your plea to the rest of the community, because we've seen how well that works by, getting it on social media and getting it out over our website to other people may feel like they could come help you now, so.
Right, okay, well, I appreciate it.
All right. All right, anybody else? Yes, ma'am. I need your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name's Elise Teague. I live at 3249 Bernath Drive, in the Bernath place. And I'm the new president of the Homeowners Association. We currently have gone through a major turnover in our community regarding that, and we have 6 new people on our board. We are actively addressing our issues and wanted to update you on that, and hope that the county, I've been working with Mr. Furman religiously, I would say, regarding solving some of our issues, well, all of our issues. So I just wanted to let you guys know about me, and also that we have pretty much an all-woman board at this point, and we're all very determined to resolve our issues. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think your biggest issue is fire prevention or fire trucks getting over your bridge?
our bridge went through a major inspection by a firm outside of this area from Tampa. And we should have the report tomorrow, actually, regarding what's wrong with our bridge. That's not the only issue. The issue is also the access road and CSX. And when you guys talk about CSX and receiving a donation, you guys should be looking at them going, why don't you give us another public crossing without closing 3? So, as has been the issue for this county for a long time, the community, we're not the only ones that have the issue of dealing with CSX. It's many other homeowners on that side of the road that are completely landlocked. So I'm trying to, I got in touch with a few other homeowners and are trying to work together, our community with everyone else surrounding that, to hopefully maybe come up with an idea and present it to the county and see if you guys will help us achieve a resolution regarding access in and out of that community that would be permanent. So.
And I feel like, you know, I'm not sure if is that either Sam's or my district down in there, but just a reminder, and I found this out the hard way, our roads aren't, or CSX Railroad's not crossing our roads. We're crossing theirs.
Correct.
They're federal. They got the power of the federal government behind them.
Eminent domain, it's a wonderful thing.
But, you know, you come to us with a good idea, I'm sure, you know, we'd be glad to support it if possible, you know, and, you know, because we want the safety of our citizens. That's our first priority as a Board of Commissioners, the safety of the citizens of Santa Rosa County, and, you know, that's what we're here for. So thank you for coming today. Appreciate that.
No problem. And, you know, just so you know, I've only been here for 3 months.
Okay.
So, bought our property on May 22nd. So, maybe 4 months now. So, it's a rude awakening to come into this situation, but I found out in roughly 2 hours, the whole history of our community. And what's really sad is that this community really is a sad story. And there's a lot of information that I have uncovered in going through all the records and doing an internal audit. And I would like to sit with the county and discuss that. And it's not something, not pointing fingers or anything like that. It's resolving a problem. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. And
Thank
I
you.
feel pretty certain that, you know, now that it's got a new direction down there, that, you know, we can help resolve some of those problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right, going once, going twice, we are adjourned.